Welcome, weary wanderer, to a gentle journey through the quiet corners of village life, where the aroma of perfectly brewed coffee mingles with stories older than memory itself. Tonight, we explore the complete tale of Brewster, the soft-spoken pigeon whose devotion to his craft has touched countless lives across peaceful communities. This is a story of dedication and friendship, of quiet moments shared over steaming cups, and of the profound connections that can bloom in the simplest of places. So settle in, let the warmth of imagined coffee embrace you, and drift into the contemplative world where every cup tells a story. Close your eyes when you're ready, and let's begin. In the distant mists of time, long before the first village bells chimed their peaceful melodies across rolling meadows, and long before the first residents built their cozy homes beneath ancient oak trees, there existed something far older and more mystical than the civilizations that would eventually flourish in these gentle lands. This was the sacred art of coffee, a craft so profound and transformative that it seemed to bridge the gap between the earthly realm and something approaching the divine. The origins of coffee in the world of peaceful villages and harmonious communities stretch back through generations beyond counting, woven into legends that have been passed down through whispered stories and carefully preserved traditions. According to the most ancient tales, told in hushed voices around evening fires when the day's work was done and the night air carried the scent of blooming flowers, coffee beans were first discovered not by accident, but through divine inspiration, a gift bestowed upon the world by forces that understood the profound need for connection and contemplation in mortal life. These earliest coffee beans, according to the stories that have survived the passage of countless seasons, possessed qualities that went far beyond mere sustenance or simple pleasure. They were said to contain within their dark, aromatic depths the very essence of wakefulness and clarity, the ability to sharpen the mind while simultaneously soothing the spirit in ways that seemed to defy the normal rules of how such things worked. More than that, they carried within them a mysterious power to bring together souls who might otherwise remain strangers, creating bonds of understanding and friendship that could span species, cultures, and even the great distances that sometimes separated one peaceful community from another. The ancient coffee masters of those distant days were figures of almost mythical reverence, individuals who had dedicated their entire lives to understanding not merely the practical aspects of cultivation and brewing, but also the deeper spiritual dimensions of their craft. These wise practitioners understood that coffee was never simply about the beverage itself, but about the sacred act of preparation, the meditative ritual of grinding and brewing, and most importantly, the profound moment of sharing that occurred when one soul offered another the perfect cup. These early masters developed techniques and traditions that were passed down through generations with the same careful attention that others might give to the most precious family heirlooms. They understood that the proper cultivation of coffee required not merely knowledge of soil and weather and timing, but also a deep appreciation for the rhythms of the natural world and the patience to work in harmony with forces far greater than any individual practitioner. The coffee plants themselves were treated as sacred entities, beings worthy of respect and gratitude, rather than mere crops to be harvested for profit. The ancient masters spoke to their plants as they tended them, offering words of encouragement during the growing season and expressions of thankfulness during the harvest. They understood that coffee beans grown with love and attention would carry that positive energy forward into every cup they eventually became, blessing not only those who drank them, but also creating an invisible network of goodwill that connected coffee drinkers across vast distances and cultural divides. The brewing process, in the hands of these ancient masters, became a form of meditation and prayer, a sacred ritual that required complete presence and attention to detail. Every movement was deliberate and meaningful, from the careful measurement of beans to the precise temperature of water, from the gentle stirring that awakened the coffee's essential oils to the patient waiting that allowed the perfect extraction to occur. These masters understood that coffee brewed with proper attention and respect would possess qualities that went far beyond mere flavor, carrying within each cup a sense of peace and connection that could transform even the most ordinary moment into something approaching the sacred. Different animal species throughout the ancient world developed their own unique relationships with coffee culture, each bringing their particular wisdom and perspective to the collective understanding of this mystical beverage. The wise owls, with their natural affinity for scholarship and contemplation, became renowned for their ability to brew coffee that enhanced mental clarity and focus, perfect for long nights of study and deep thinking. Their coffee ceremonies became legendary gathering places for philosophers, writers, and anyone seeking to expand their understanding of the world's deeper mysteries. The patient elephants, blessed with remarkable memory and natural gentleness, became masters of brewing coffee that promoted emotional healing and spiritual restoration. Their coffee houses became sanctuaries where troubled souls could find peace and perspective, where the act of sharing a perfectly brewed cup created space for healing conversations and the mending of broken relationships. The industrious bees, with their intricate understanding of timing and precision, developed brewing techniques that emphasized the importance of perfect coordination between all elements of the process. Their coffee was known for its ability to energize and inspire, to bring clarity to complex problems, and to foster the kind of productive collaboration that could accomplish seemingly impossible tasks. The graceful deer, creatures of natural elegance and quiet wisdom, became renowned for brewing coffee that promoted inner peace and spiritual reflection. Their coffee ceremonies were often conducted in forest clearings or mountain meadows, where the combination of perfect coffee and natural beauty created experiences that touched the very depths of the soul. Throughout all these diverse traditions and approaches, certain fundamental principles remained constant, forming the foundation upon which all true coffee mastery was built. The first and most important of these was the understanding that coffee was never merely about personal pleasure or individual satisfaction, but always about service to others and the creation of connections between souls who might otherwise remain isolated in their individual experiences. The second principle was the recognition that coffee required not merely technical skill, but also deep spiritual preparation on the part of the one who brewed it. The ancient masters understood that the emotional and spiritual state of the coffee maker would inevitably be transmitted into every cup they prepared, making it essential that those who would serve others approach their craft with hearts full of love, minds clear of anger or resentment, and spirits aligned with the highest ideals of service and compassion. The third fundamental principle was the understanding that coffee existed to create sacred space and sacred time, transforming ordinary moments into opportunities for connection, reflection, and spiritual nourishment. The act of sharing coffee was never to be hurried or treated as merely functional, but was to be approached as a ritual worthy of the same reverence that might be given to the most important ceremonies and celebrations. As these ancient traditions evolved and spread across the peaceful world of village life and harmonious community living, they began to influence not merely individual practitioners but entire cultures and ways of life. Communities that embraced coffee culture found themselves becoming more connected, more compassionate, and more capable of solving conflicts through dialogue and understanding, rather than confrontation and division. Coffee houses began to appear in villages and towns throughout the ancient world, serving not merely as places to purchase and consume beverages, but as community centers where people from all walks of life could gather on equal terms. In these sacred spaces, social barriers dissolved in the warmth of shared appreciation for perfect coffee, creating opportunities for friendship and collaboration that might never have emerged in more formal or hierarchical settings. The coffee masters who operated these early establishments understood that their role went far beyond that of mere shopkeepers or beverage preparers. They were guardians of ancient wisdom, keepers of traditions that connected their present moment to countless generations of coffee lovers who had come before them. They were also healers and counselors, individuals whose patient listening and perfect coffee could help troubled souls find their way through even the most difficult circumstances. These early coffee houses became known as places where travelers could find not merely refreshment for their bodies, but also nourishment for their spirits and connections with fellow travelers who shared their love of exploration and discovery. The tradition of offering hospitality to strangers, of creating space where anyone could find welcome and warmth, became so deeply embedded in coffee culture that it remained strong even as the world changed and evolved around it. The brewing techniques developed by these ancient masters were far more sophisticated than they might have appeared to casual observers. Every aspect of the process, from the selection of beans to the final moment of service, was governed by principles that had been refined through countless generations of practice and experimentation. The masters understood that even the smallest variations in technique could produce dramatically different results, not merely in terms of flavor, but also in terms of the emotional and spiritual impact the coffee would have on those who drank it. The grinding of coffee beans, for example, was understood to be a deeply spiritual act that required complete presence and attention. The ancient masters spoke of the need to grind beans with gratitude and intention, understanding that the energy and attitude brought to this fundamental step would be carried forward into every subsequent stage of the brewing process. Different grinding techniques were developed for different purposes, some designed to enhance mental clarity, others to promote emotional healing, and still others to foster spiritual connection and understanding. The relationship between coffee masters and their equipment was also understood to be profoundly important, with each tool and implement treated as a sacred object worthy of respect and careful maintenance. The ancient masters understood that coffee brewing equipment that was cared for with love and attention would serve more faithfully and produce better results than tools that were treated as merely functional objects. Water, the other essential element in coffee preparation, was approached with equal reverence and attention to detail. The ancient masters understood that water carried within it not merely the chemical properties necessary for proper extraction, but also subtle energies and qualities that could enhance or diminish the spiritual impact of the finished coffee. Springs and wells known for producing particularly pure and spiritually charged water became pilgrimage destinations for serious coffee practitioners who would travel great distances to obtain water worthy of their finest beans. The temperature of water used for brewing was understood to be critical, not merely for proper extraction of flavor compounds, but also for the preservation and enhancement of the spiritual qualities contained within the coffee beans. The ancient masters developed techniques for heating water that maintained not only the proper temperature, but also the life force and energy that made it suitable for sacred use. The timing of various stages in the brewing process was governed by principles that went far beyond mere convenience or efficiency. The ancient masters understood that coffee beans, like all living things, possessed their own natural rhythms and cycles, and that proper brewing required working in harmony with these natural patterns rather than against them. Certain times of day were considered more auspicious for brewing than others, with many masters rising before dawn to prepare their first pots during the sacred transition between night and day. The act of serving coffee was perhaps the most important aspect of the entire process, the moment when all the care and attention and spiritual preparation that had gone into cultivation and brewing could finally fulfill its true purpose of creating connection and nourishment for others. The ancient masters understood that the manner in which coffee was presented and offered could either enhance or diminish all the work that had come before, making the development of proper serving techniques and attitudes as important as any other aspect of their craft. As these ancient traditions were passed down through generations of dedicated practitioners, they began to evolve and adapt to the changing needs and circumstances of the communities they served, while always maintaining their essential spiritual foundation. New techniques were developed, new approaches were explored, and new understanding was gained, but always within the framework of the fundamental principles that had guided coffee culture since its earliest beginnings. The sacred nature of coffee as a bridge between souls, as a catalyst for connection and understanding, as a medium through which love and compassion could be expressed and shared, remained constant throughout all these changes and adaptations. Whether served in elaborate ceremonies or simple daily rituals, whether prepared by master practitioners or humble beginners, coffee retained its power to transform ordinary moments into opportunities for grace and connection. This ancient wisdom, these time-honored traditions, these sacred principles and practices would eventually find their perfect embodiment in a soft-spoken pigeon whose dedication to his craft would touch countless lives, and whose quiet example would demonstrate the profound truth that the greatest service often comes through the simplest acts of love and attention to detail. In the gentle hills that rolled like sleeping giants across the peaceful landscape, where wildflowers nodded in afternoon breezes and streams sang their eternal songs of contentment, there lived a young pigeon whose destiny would intertwine with the ancient art of coffee in ways that neither he nor anyone who knew him could have possibly imagined. This was Brewster in his earliest days, a quiet soul even then, possessed of the kind of thoughtful nature that seemed to observe the world with deeper attention than most creatures brought to their daily existence. Brewster's family had never been particularly distinguished or wealthy, nor had they pursued any of the more glamorous occupations that sometimes brought fame and recognition to members of the pigeon community. They were simple, hard-working birds who found their greatest satisfaction in the quiet rhythms of domestic life and the small but meaningful contributions they could make to the peaceful communities where they chose to build their nests and raise their calm. Young, his father had worked for many seasons as a messenger, carrying letters and small packages between villages that were connected by winding paths through forests and meadows, but separated by distances that made regular communication challenging for those who could not fly. It was honest work, meaningful work, the kind of service that helped bind communities together and maintain the networks of friendship and cooperation that made peaceful village life possible. His mother had devoted herself to the traditional arts of homemaking that were so highly valued in pigeon culture, creating spaces of warmth and beauty that served as sanctuaries for family members who needed respite from the challenges and stresses of daily life. She possessed the rare gift of being able to transform even the most modest dwelling into a place that felt like a haven, where every detail had been considered and arranged with love and attention to the needs of those who would find shelter there. From his earliest days, young Brewster displayed the same quiet attention to detail and natural gentleness that characterized both of his parents. But there was something else in his nature as well, a quality that set him apart from his siblings and peers in ways that were initially difficult to define or understand. Where other young pigeons might be content to accept the world as they found it, Brewster seemed always to be looking deeper, searching for layers of meaning and significance that others might overlook or dismiss as unimportant. He would spend long hours watching the adults in his community as they went about their daily routines, not with the idle curiosity that characterized most young creatures, but with a focused attention that seemed to be studying not merely what they were doing, but why they chose to do it in particular ways, and what deeper purposes their actions might be serving. This quality made him seem mature beyond his years, though it sometimes also made him appear somewhat distant or withdrawn to those who did not understand the depth of thought that lay behind his quiet observations. The first time Brewster encountered coffee was on a day that began like any other in his family's modest but comfortable home, with the gentle sounds of morning routine and the soft conversations that marked the beginning of another peaceful day in their quiet corner of the world. His parents had been invited to visit distant relatives who lived in a village several hours' flight away, and they had decided to bring young Brewster along as a way of introducing him to the broader community of pigeons that existed beyond the immediate boundaries of his childhood home. The journey itself was an adventure for a young pigeon who had rarely traveled beyond the familiar landmarks of his own village, carrying him over landscapes that seemed to stretch endlessly toward horizons that promised new discoveries and experiences. He marveled at the way the world looked from above, how patterns became visible from altitude that remained hidden to ground-dwelling creatures, how rivers and roads and forest edges created a vast tapestry of interconnected systems that somehow worked together to support the countless communities that dotted the peaceful countryside. Their destination was a village that seemed similar in many ways to his own home community, but possessed subtle differences that spoke of local traditions and customs that had evolved in unique directions over the generations. The buildings were arranged in slightly different patterns. The gardens featured flowers and plants that thrived in the particular soil and climate conditions of this specific location, and the residents had developed their own distinctive approaches to the common challenges and opportunities of community life. It was in the home of his father's cousin, a distinguished pigeon, who had achieved some measure of local prominence through his work as a keeper of community records and local historian, that Brewster first encountered the mysterious and transformative substance that would eventually define his life's work. The cousin had recently returned from a journey to a distant region where coffee culture had taken particularly deep root, and he was eager to share his discovery with family members who might appreciate its significance. The first indication that something unusual was about to occur came through Brewster's sense of smell, as an aroma unlike anything he had ever experienced began to fill the modest dwelling where they were gathered. It was rich and complex, carrying within it layers of scent that seemed to unfold and reveal themselves gradually, like a piece of music that disclosed new harmonies and melodies each time it was heard. There was earthiness in the aroma, speaking of dark soil and ancient roots, and the patient work of growing things that connected the substance to the natural world from which it had emerged. But there was also something that seemed to transcend mere earthiness, a quality that suggested transformation and refinement, the kind of careful attention and skilled craftsmanship that could take raw materials and elevate them into something approaching art. Young Brewster found himself drawn toward the source of this remarkable fragrance with an intensity that surprised even him, his usual reserved and observant nature giving way to a curiosity so powerful that it seemed to pull him forward almost without conscious volition. He followed the scent through the familiar domestic spaces of his relative's home until he found himself standing in the doorway of a small room that had been set aside for the preparation and serving of this mysterious beverage. What he saw there would remain etched in his memory for the rest of his life. A scene so perfect in its composition and so filled with quiet beauty that it seemed to exist in a realm slightly apart from ordinary reality. His father's cousin stood beside a small table upon which had been arranged an assortment of equipment and implements that appeared to have been crafted with extraordinary care and attention to both function and aesthetic appeal. There was a device for grinding coffee beans that had been carved from wood so fine and smooth that it seemed to glow with its own inner light. its surfaces polished to a degree that spoke of countless hours of patient care and maintenance. Beside it sat a brewing apparatus made of materials that Brewster could not immediately identify, but which possessed a quality of elegant simplicity that made the entire arrangement look like something that might have been created by like Potter, master artisans working at the height of their powers. But it was not the equipment itself that captured young Brewster's attention so completely, remarkable though it was. Rather, it was the manner in which his relative moved among these objects. The careful attention he brought to every gesture and movement, the sense of reverence and dedication that seemed to transform even the most routine tasks into something approaching ritual or ceremony. The older pigeon moved with a kind of meditative precision that Brewster had never witnessed before, each action flowing seamlessly into the next, as if he were following a choreography that had been practiced and refined over many years. There was nothing hurried or casual about his movements. No sense that he was merely performing routine tasks in order to achieve a predetermined outcome. Instead, every gesture seemed to be an expression of devotion and respect, a way of honoring not merely the materials and equipment he was working with, but also the ancient traditions and accumulated wisdom that had made this moment of preparation possible. It was as if he understood that he was participating in something larger than himself, something that connected him to countless other practitioners across space and time who had devoted themselves to the same sacred craft. The grinding of the coffee beans was performed with a rhythm and consistency that seemed to create its own form of music, a gentle percussion that provided a meditative backdrop for the preparation process. Brewster watched in fascination as his relative measured the beans with careful precision, not simply by volume or weight, but through some deeper understanding of what would be required to create the perfect balance of flavors and qualities in the finished beverage. The heating of water was accomplished with equal attention to detail, the temperature monitored not through mechanical instruments, but through senses that had been trained and refined through years of practice to recognize the subtle signs that indicated the precise moment when the water had reached its ideal state for the extraction of coffee's essential qualities. When the actual brewing began, young Brewster found himself holding his breath without realizing it, caught up in the quiet drama of transformation that was unfolding before him. He watched as hot water met ground coffee beans and began the miraculous process of extraction, drawing out flavors and aromas and essences that had been locked away within the beans since their harvest in distant fields under foreign skies. The brewing process itself seemed to take place in a pocket of time that existed outside the normal flow of moments, where patience was not merely a virtue but an essential ingredient in the creation of something truly worthy of the attention and care that was being devoted to it. There was no sense of waiting or anticipation, no feeling that the process needed to be hurried or accelerated, but rather a deep appreciation for the natural rhythms and timing that governed this ancient transformation. When the coffee was finally ready, when the last drop had been extracted, and the brewing apparatus had been set aside with the same careful attention that had characterized every other aspect of the process, Brewster's relative poured the finished beverage into cups that had clearly been selected specifically for this purpose. These were not ordinary drinking vessels, but objects of beauty in their own right, their shapes and proportions carefully designed to enhance both the visual appeal and the sensory experience of the coffee they would contain. The moment when the cup was placed before young Brewster felt like a threshold, a crossing point between the world he had known before this day and whatever lay ahead in his future understanding of what was possible in the realm of taste and sensation and spiritual nourishment. He lifted the cup to his beak with the same careful attention he had observed in his relative's movements, understanding instinctively that this was not merely about consuming a beverage, but about participating in something that demanded respect and mindfulness. The first taste was a revelation that seemed to explode through every sense simultaneously, flooding his consciousness with flavors and sensations that he had never imagined could exist. There was bitterness, but it was a noble bitterness that spoke of depth and complexity rather than harshness or unpleasantness. There was sweetness, but it was subtle and nuanced, revealing itself gradually rather than overwhelming the other elements that contributed to the coffee's overall character. But beyond the immediate sensory impact, there was something else happening, something that seemed to occur on a level that transcended mere taste or smell or any other physical sensation. The coffee seemed to awaken something within him, to illuminate aspects of his own consciousness that had been dormant or undeveloped until this moment of contact with this remarkable substance. He felt a clarity of thought that was unlike anything he had ever experienced, as if fog had been lifted from his mind, and he could suddenly see connections and patterns that had previously remained hidden. But this was not the sharp, aggressive clarity that comes from artificial stimulation, but rather a gentle illumination that enhanced his natural capacity for observation and understanding, without creating any sense of agitation or unrest. More remarkable still was the sense of connection he felt, not merely to the coffee itself or to the person who had prepared it, but to something vast and ancient and enduring that seemed to stretch across time and space to encompass all the souls who had ever shared in this particular form of communion. It was as if the simple act of drinking coffee had opened a doorway into a realm of shared experience and mutual understanding that existed parallel to the ordinary world of daily life and routine concerns. As he sat in that quiet room, savoring each sip and marveling at the complexity and beauty of what he was experiencing, young Brewster began to understand that he had encountered something that would change the course of his entire existence. This was not merely a pleasant beverage or an interesting new experience, but a calling, a purpose, a destiny that had been waiting for him to discover it and claim it as his own. The conversation that followed, as his relative explained the history and traditions surrounding coffee culture, the techniques and principles that governed proper preparation, and the deeper significance that coffee held for those who truly understood its potential, felt like an initiation into mysteries that had been preserved and passed down through generations of devoted practitioners. Brewster learned about the ancient masters who had first developed the techniques that made truly perfect coffee possible, about the spiritual dimensions of coffee preparation and service, about the way that coffee could serve as a bridge between souls and a catalyst for the kind of connections that made life meaningful and fulfilling. He learned about the patience and dedication required to master the craft, about the years of study and practice that separated casual coffee drinkers from true artisans who could unlock the full potential contained within each carefully selected bean. But more than the technical knowledge or historical information, what impressed itself most deeply upon young Brewster's consciousness was the sense of purpose and meaning that seemed to emanate from his relative as he spoke about his own relationship with coffee culture. This was clearly not merely a hobby or casual interest, but a calling that had given shape and direction to his entire adult life, a source of satisfaction and fulfillment that went far beyond anything that could be measured in terms of material success or social recognition. The older pigeon spoke of the joy he found in creating perfect cups of coffee for others, of the satisfaction that came from seeing the delight and appreciation in their eyes when they tasted something that had been prepared with genuine love and attention to detail. He described the quiet contentment that filled his days when they were organized around the rhythms and rituals of coffee preparation, the sense of alignment with natural cycles and ancient traditions that made even the most routine tasks feel meaningful and purposeful. As the afternoon wore on, and the conversation continued, young Brewster felt something crystallizing within his consciousness, a certainty that had been building throughout the day and was now becoming impossible to ignore or dismiss. This was what he was meant to do with his life. This was the path that would allow him to express his deepest nature and make his most meaningful contribution to the world around him. The journey home that evening was filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation as Brewster contemplated the implications of what he had discovered about himself and his future. He understood that choosing to dedicate his life to coffee would mean years of study and apprenticeship, countless hours of practice and refinement, and the kind of patient dedication that many of his peers might find difficult to understand or appreciate. But he also understood that he had encountered something that resonated with the deepest aspects of his nature, something that promised to provide the kind of purpose and fulfillment that made all the necessary sacrifices and challenges worthwhile. The quiet, contemplative qualities that had sometimes made him feel different from other young pigeons were exactly the traits that would serve him well in the pursuit of coffee mastery, while his natural attention to detail and his deep appreciation for the subtle aspects of experience would allow him to develop the sensitivity and discrimination required for truly exceptional work in this ancient craft. In the days and weeks that followed that transformative encounter, Brewster began to seek out every opportunity to learn more about coffee culture and to develop his understanding of the principles and practices that govern the creation of perfect coffee. He read every book and manuscript he could find that dealt with coffee history and technique. He sought out conversations with anyone who had knowledge or experience to share, and he began to practice the basic skills of grinding and brewing with whatever equipment he could obtain or improvise. But more than the practical learning, he devoted himself to cultivating the inner qualities and attitudes that he had recognized as essential for anyone who would truly master the spiritual dimensions of coffee service. He practiced patience and mindfulness. He studied the art of deep listening and careful observation, and he worked to develop the kind of genuine care and concern for others that would allow him to serve not merely their physical desire for coffee, but their deeper needs for connection and understanding. The decision to make coffee his life's work was not one that he announced dramatically or with great fanfare, but rather something that emerged gradually from the accumulation of countless small choices and daily practices that pointed him steadily in the direction of his ultimate destiny. Each day brought new learning, new understanding, new confirmation that he was following the path that had been meant for him since before his birth. As seasons passed and his knowledge and skills continued to develop, Brewster began to envision the kind of coffee establishment he would someday create, a place that would embody all the highest ideals and most sacred traditions of coffee culture, while also serving the practical needs of whatever community he would eventually choose to call his home. It would be more than a business or commercial enterprise, more than a mere place to purchase and consume beverages, but rather a sanctuary where the ancient art of coffee could be practiced and shared in its fullest and most meaningful form. This vision sustained him through the years of preparation and learning that lay ahead, providing both inspiration for his continued growth and guidance for the countless decisions and choices that would eventually shape his destiny as one of the most beloved and respected coffee masters in the peaceful world of village life and harmonious community living. The years that followed Brewster's awakening to his true calling were marked by a restless searching, a deep longing to find the perfect place where he could establish the coffee sanctuary that had taken such clear shape in his dreams and meditations. He had spent countless hours envisioning every detail of what this establishment would become, from the careful arrangement of tables and chairs that would encourage both solitude and gentle conversation, to the precise selection of equipment that would allow him to create coffee of the highest possible quality for every soul who might seek refuge within his walls. Yet for all the clarity of his vision, the practical matter of finding the right location proved to be far more challenging than young Brewster had initially anticipated. He understood instinctively that the roost, as he had begun to think of his future coffee house, could not simply be placed anywhere that happened to be available or affordable. The location itself would need to possess qualities that resonated with the sacred nature of the work he intended to do there, an atmosphere and energy that would support and enhance, rather than diminish, the transformative potential of perfect coffee shared in an environment of peace and mutual respect. During this period of searching, Brewster traveled extensively throughout the gentle countryside that connected the various peaceful villages and harmonious communities where he might potentially make his home. Each journey was both a practical scouting mission and a spiritual pilgrimage, an opportunity to experience different approaches to community life, while also seeking the signs and subtle indications that would guide him toward his ultimate destination. He visited bustling market towns, where merchants and craftspeople gathered to trade goods and share news from distant regions, places filled with the energy and excitement that came from constant commerce and the intersection of many different paths and purposes. While these communities possessed undeniable vitality and offered many opportunities for a coffee master to serve large numbers of customers, Brewster found that the pace and atmosphere of such places did not align with his vision of what the Roost should become. He explored quiet agricultural villages where the rhythms of life followed the ancient patterns of planting and harvest, where the passing of seasons marked time more meaningfully than any clock or calendar could ever do. These communities possessed the kind of deep peace and connection to natural cycles that appealed strongly to Brewster's contemplative nature, but he sensed that they might not provide the steady flow of customers that would be necessary to sustain a coffee house dedicated to serving the broader community rather than just local residents. He investigated mountain settlements perched high above the valleys, where the thin air and spectacular views created an atmosphere of elevation and transcendence that seemed almost conducive to the kind of spiritual experiences that perfect coffee could facilitate. Yet the remoteness and difficulty of access to such places made them impractical for his purposes, beautiful though they were in their isolation and proximity to the heavens. Throughout all these explorations, Brewster carried with him a small traveling kit that contained the essential equipment necessary for preparing coffee in whatever circumstances he might encounter. This portable setup allowed him to practice his craft and share his growing expertise with the various hosts and fellow travelers he met along his journey, creating opportunities for the kind of connections and conversations that helped him understand more deeply what he hoped to achieve through his future establishment. Each cup of coffee he prepared during these travels became both an offering of hospitality and a form of research, allowing him to observe how different individuals responded to his coffee and to refine his understanding of the subtle variations in technique and presentation that could enhance the experience for different types of people. He learned that some souls preferred their coffee strong and bold, reflecting personalities that approached life with directness and confidence, while others were drawn to more delicate and nuanced preparations that matched their contemplative and introspective natures. More importantly, he began to develop his ability to read the unspoken needs and desires of those he served, to understand through careful observation and intuitive sensitivity what kind of coffee experience would provide each individual with exactly what their spirit required in that particular moment. This skill, which would eventually become one of his greatest strengths as a coffee master, required not merely technical knowledge, but also genuine empathy and the ability to set aside his own preferences and assumptions in order to serve others with true selflessness. It was during one of these journeys, as autumn was painting the countryside in shades of gold and crimson that seemed to set the very air ablaze with beauty, that Brewster first encountered the place that would eventually become his home. He had been traveling through a region known for its ancient forests and hidden valleys, following winding paths that seemed to lead deeper into realms of natural wonder with each passing mile. The village he discovered, nestled in one of these secluded valleys, appeared to him first as a collection of warm lights glowing through the gathering dusk, a constellation of human habitation that promised warmth and welcome after a long day of solitary travel. As he drew closer, and the details of the community began to resolve themselves in the fading light, he felt something stirring within him that he had never experienced during any of his previous explorations. This was not merely another pleasant village or potentially suitable location, but something that seemed to call to him with a voice that spoke directly to the deepest levels of his consciousness. The very air of the place felt different, charged with a quality of peace and possibility that made him understand immediately that his long search was finally approaching its end. The buildings of the village were arranged with an organic harmony that seemed to have grown naturally from the landscape itself, rather than being imposed upon it through human will and design. Ancient trees provided natural gathering places where paths converged, and neighbors might pause to share news or simply enjoy each other's company. Gardens overflowed with flowers and herbs that perfumed the evening air with fragrances that spoke of generations of careful tending and love. But it was not merely the physical beauty of the place that captured Brewster's attention so completely. There was something in the quality of interaction he observed between the villagers, a gentleness and mutual respect that suggested a community that had learned to live in true harmony with both the natural world and each other. This was exactly the kind of environment where his vision of the roost could flourish, where the sacred art of coffee service could find its perfect expression and fulfill its highest purpose. As he spent his first evening in the village, sharing simple lodging with a family who welcomed travelers with the kind of uncomplicated hospitality that had become rare in many other places, Brewster learned more about the community's history and the values that had shaped its unique character. The villagers spoke of traditions that stretched back through countless generations, of a commitment to living in balance with the natural cycles and rhythms that governed their valley home. They told stories of ancestors who had chosen this location specifically because of its isolation from the conflicts and complications that sometimes troubled the wider world, seeking to create a place where different species could live together in peace and mutual support. Over the generations, this commitment to harmony had attracted like-minded souls from across the region, gradually building a community that represented the highest ideals of cooperative living and shared purpose. The village boasted a remarkable diversity of residents, with members of various animal species contributing their unique skills and perspectives to the common good. There were wise owls who served as teachers and keepers of knowledge, industrious beavers who maintained the waterways and bridges that connected different parts of the community, graceful deer who tended the gardens and green spaces that made the village so beautiful, and countless others who had found their place in this peaceful haven. What impressed Brewster most profoundly was the way these different species had learned to appreciate and celebrate their differences rather than allowing them to become sources of division or conflict. Each group contributed something essential to the community's well-being, and all were valued equally for their unique gifts and perspectives. This spirit of inclusion and mutual respect was exactly what he had hoped to find as the foundation for his coffee house. During his second day in the village, as he explored the winding streets and discovered hidden corners where ancient stone benches invited contemplation and rest, Brewster encountered something that seemed too perfect to be mere coincidence. In the heart of the community, where several major paths converged in a natural gathering place surrounded by the village's most beautiful gardens, stood a building that appeared to have been waiting specifically for his arrival. The structure was modest in size, but possessed architectural details that spoke of careful craftsmanship and attention to aesthetic beauty. Its windows were positioned to capture the morning light in ways that would create a warm and welcoming atmosphere during the early hours when many residents would be beginning their daily routines. The entrance faced the main thoroughfare of the village in a way that would make it easily accessible to anyone passing by, while also maintaining enough separation from the busiest areas to preserve the sense of peace and tranquility that would be essential for proper coffee service. Most remarkably, the building appeared to have been designed with exactly the kind of coffee service in mind that Brewster had been envisioning throughout his years of preparation and planning. The main room was spacious enough to accommodate a reasonable number of customers, while still maintaining an intimate atmosphere that would encourage the kind of quiet conversation and peaceful reflection that represented the highest ideals of coffee culture. Adjacent to the main room was a smaller space that would be perfect for the careful preparation of coffee, with excellent ventilation for the management of aromas and adequate storage for the equipment and supplies that would be necessary for professional quality coffee service. The entire layout seemed to flow in ways that would support the natural rhythms of coffee preparation and service, creating an environment where both the coffee master and his customers could feel comfortable and at ease. When Brewster inquired about the availability of this perfect space, he learned that it had recently been vacated by a merchant who had decided to relocate to a larger city where expanded opportunities might allow his business to grow. The building's owner, an elderly rabbit who had lived in the village for many decades and had become something of an unofficial keeper of community traditions, was seeking a new tenant who would use the space in ways that would benefit the village as a whole, rather than simply pursuing personal profit. The conversation that followed between Brewster and this wise elder became a kind of informal interview that ranged far beyond the practical details of rent and lease terms to explore deeper questions about purpose and intention and the probe's kind of contribution that the roost might make to the community's ongoing life and development. The rabbit listened with careful attention as Brewster described his vision of coffee service as a form of community ministry, his commitment to creating a space where all residents would feel welcome regardless of their species or background, and his understanding of coffee culture as something that existed primarily to serve others rather than to generate wealth or recognition for himself. By the end of their lengthy discussion, both Brewster and his potential landlord understood that they had found exactly what each had been seeking. The building would provide the perfect physical foundation for the roost, while Brewster's vision and dedication promised to fulfill the community's need for a gathering place that would enhance, rather than diminish, the village's commitment to harmony and mutual support. The practical arrangements for establishing the roost proceeded with the kind of smooth efficiency that seemed to confirm that this entire endeavor was unfolding according to some greater plan or purpose that extended beyond Brewster's individual will and desire. Community members who learned of his intentions offered assistance with everything from the physical renovation of the space to the procurement of equipment and supplies that would be necessary for professional coffee service. A group of skilled craftsmen, led by a master carpenter who had grown up in the village and understood perfectly the aesthetic standards and functional requirements that would be appropriate for this particular location, volunteered to handle the modifications and improvements that would transform the empty commercial space into the warm and welcoming environment that Brewster had envisioned. These artisans approached their work with the same spirit of dedication and attention to detail that Brewster brought to his coffee preparation, understanding that they were not merely renovating a building, but creating a sacred space where ancient traditions would be honored and new friendships would be born. Every detail, from the selection of wood for the tables and chairs to the positioning of windows and lighting fixtures, was considered carefully for its contribution to the overall atmosphere and functionality of the finished space. The process of equipping the roost with the tools and implements necessary for proper coffee service, became an opportunity for Brewster to deepen his connections with suppliers and craftsmen who shared his commitment to quality and boast excellence. He sought out artisans who could create grinding equipment with the precision and durability necessary for consistent results, brewers who understood the subtle requirements of different coffee preparation methods, and storage containers that would preserve the freshness and flavor of carefully selected coffee beans. Each piece of equipment was chosen not merely for its functional capabilities, but also for its aesthetic qualities and its ability to contribute to the overall harmony and beauty of the roost's interior environment. Brewster understood that everything his customers saw and touched would influence their experience and their ability to fully appreciate the coffee he would prepare for them, making the selection of appropriate tools and furnishings an essential aspect of his preparation for opening his establishment. The search for reliable suppliers of high-quality coffee beans took Brewster on several additional journeys to regions known for their coffee cultivation and processing. These trips provided opportunities to learn directly from growers and processors who had dedicated their lives to producing the finest possible raw materials for coffee preparation, while also allowing him to establish the relationships and supply chains that would ensure the roost could consistently offer coffee of exceptional quality. During these visits to coffee-growing regions, Brewster gained deeper appreciation for the complexity and skill required to transform coffee plants from seedlings to mature trees, producing beans worthy of careful preparation and service. He learned about the countless variables that could influence the final quality of coffee beans, from soil composition and weather patterns to harvesting techniques and processing methods. Understanding that his role as a coffee master was merely the final step in a long chain of dedicated work performed by many different hands. This expanded understanding of coffee production reinforced his commitment to treating his craft with the reverence and respect it deserved, while also inspiring him to develop relationships with his suppliers based on mutual appreciation and fair compensation rather than simple commercial transactions. He wanted the Roost to be part of a network of coffee professionals who supported each other's work and shared a common commitment to excellence and ethical business practices. As the physical preparation of the Roost neared completion and the opening day approached, Brewster found himself experiencing a mixture of excitement and nervousness that was unlike anything he had felt during his years of preparation and planning. All of his study and practice and visioning had led to this moment when his dreams would finally encounter the test of reality, when he would discover whether his understanding of coffee service and community building could translate into something that would truly benefit the village that had welcomed him so warmly. The final weeks before opening were devoted to countless hours of practice and refinement, as Brewster worked to perfect every aspect of the coffee service he would provide, and to ensure that every detail of the Roost's operation reflected the standards of excellence and hospitality he had committed himself to maintaining. He practiced different brewing techniques until his movements became as smooth and graceful as a dancer's choreography. He tested various combinations of equipment and methods until he found the approaches that produced the most consistently excellent results, and he rehearsed the subtle art of customer service until he felt confident in his ability to make every visitor feel welcome and appreciated. Yet beneath all the practical preparation, Brewster understood that the true success or failure of the Roost would depend not on technical perfection or commercial viability, but on something far more elusive and precious: the ability to create authentic connections between souls who might otherwise remain strangers, to provide a space where the ancient magic of coffee could work its transformative effects on individuals and community alike. The morning of the Roost's official opening dawned clear and bright, with golden sunlight streaming through the carefully positioned windows to illuminate the warm wood surfaces and gleaming coffee equipment that represented the culmination of so many years of dreaming and preparation. As Brewster made his final preparations and brewed his first official pot of coffee in his new establishment, he offered a silent prayer of gratitude for all the circumstances and relationships and opportunities that had brought him to this moment of beginning. The first customer to enter the roost was the elderly rabbit who had become his landlord and mentor, arriving precisely at the moment of official opening, with a smile that conveyed both congratulations and confidence in the success of the venture they had planned together. As Brewster served this first cup of coffee in his new establishment, preparing it with all the care and attention that represented his highest ideals of service and hospitality, he felt the profound satisfaction that comes from knowing that one's life work has finally found its proper expression and begun to fulfill its intended purpose in the world. In the gentle months that followed the roost's opening, as word of Brewster's exceptional coffee and welcoming establishment spread throughout the village and beyond, a remarkable transformation began to take place in the daily rhythms and social patterns of the peaceful community that had embraced him so warmly. What had begun as simply another business serving the practical needs of local residents gradually evolved into something far more significant and profound, becoming the beating heart around which much of the village's communal life began to organize itself. The transformation was subtle at first, barely perceptible to casual observers, but unmistakable to anyone who took the time to notice the small changes in how people moved through their days and structured their interactions with one another. Where once villagers might have passed each other on the street with nothing more than polite nods or brief greetings, now these same encounters often included invitations to share coffee at the roost, creating opportunities for conversations and connections that might never have occurred in the more formal or hurried contexts of daily business and routine obligations. The first regular customers to establish themselves as part of the roost's daily constellation were drawn from among the village's most prominent and influential residents, souls whose natural leadership and deep community connections made their endorsement particularly valuable for a new establishment, seeking to find its proper place in the social fabric of local life. Yet what made these early patrons truly special was not their status or influence, but the genuine appreciation they displayed for both the quality of Brewster's coffee and the atmosphere of peaceful hospitality he had worked so carefully to create. Among the most faithful and enthusiastic of these early regulars was Tom Nook, the industrious and entrepreneurial Tanuki, who had built one of the region's most successful general merchandise businesses through a combination of shrewd business sense, genuine commitment to customer service, and an almost uncanny ability to anticipate the needs and desires of the communities he served. Tom's shops had become essential gathering places in their own right, serving not merely as sources of necessary goods and services, but as informal community centers where news was shared, friendships were maintained, and the countless small interactions that bind a community together could flourish. Tom's relationship with the roost began during the establishment's very first week of operation, when the busy merchant found himself with an unexpected break in his normally packed schedule and decided to investigate the new coffee house that had already begun generating considerable discussion among his customers and neighbors. What he discovered there would fundamentally change not only his daily routine, but also his understanding of what business relationships could become when they were built on foundations of mutual respect and genuine appreciation, rather than simple commercial transactions. From the moment Tom first tasted Brewster's coffee, prepared with the same meticulous attention to detail that characterized everything the Quiet Pigeon did, he understood that he was experiencing something genuinely exceptional, something that transcended the merely good or adequate to achieve a level of excellence that was both rare and precious. The coffee possessed a complexity and depth that revealed new layers of flavor and aroma with each sip, while also delivering the kind of energizing clarity that Tom needed to maintain his focus and enthusiasm throughout his demanding days. But even more impressive than the technical quality of the coffee was the manner in which it was served. The atmosphere of calm professionalism and quiet dignity that Brewster brought to every interaction with his customers. There was no hurried efficiency or commercial urgency in his approach. No sense that he was merely trying to process as many transactions as possible in the shortest amount of time. Instead, each customer was treated as an honored guest whose individual preferences and needs deserved careful attention and respectful consideration. For Tom, who had built his own business success on similar principles of customer service and community engagement, this approach resonated deeply with his own values and philosophy of commerce. He recognized in Brewster a kindred spirit who understood that true business success came not from maximizing short-term profits, but from building lasting relationships based on trust, quality, and mutual benefit. The conversations that developed between Tom and Brewster during the merchant's regular morning visits to the Roost became opportunities for both men to share insights and perspectives drawn from their respective experiences in serving their community's needs and supporting its ongoing growth and development. Tom would often arrive early in the morning, before the day's customers began demanding his attention, seeking the mental clarity and peaceful atmosphere that would help him approach the challenges ahead with wisdom and effectiveness. These early morning sessions became informal business consultations where Tom could discuss complex decisions or challenging situations with someone whose judgment he had come to trust and value. Brewster, despite his relative newcomer status in the village, possessed a natural wisdom and ability to see situations from multiple perspectives that made his counsel particularly valuable for someone navigating the complexities of business, leadership, and community responsibility. Over time, Tom began scheduling important business meetings at the Roost, recognizing that the establishment's atmosphere of calm professionalism and its reputation for exceptional service made it an ideal location for the kind of serious discussions that required focus, discretion, and mutual respect among all participants. The quality of the coffee served as more than mere refreshment during these meetings, providing a shared experience of excellence that helped establish the right tone and mindset for productive negotiations and collaborative problem-solving. Tom's enthusiastic endorsement of the Roost, expressed through both his regular patronage and his frequent recommendations to business associates and fellow community leaders, helped establish Brewster's reputation far beyond what might have been expected for such a new establishment. The merchant's seal of approval carried considerable weight throughout the business community, opening doors and creating opportunities that might have taken years to develop through other means. Another pillar of the Roost's growing community was Isabel, the dedicated and hard-working Shih Tzu, who served as the village's administrative coordinator and whose tireless efforts to maintain the countless systems and procedures that kept community life running smoothly had made her beloved by virtually every resident. Isabel's role required her to be available to help with everything from official paperwork and permit applications to conflict resolution and community event planning, demanding a level of energy, patience, and attention to detail that would have overwhelmed most individuals. For Isabel, the Roost became an essential refuge where she could find the mental clarity and emotional restoration necessary to maintain her effectiveness in serving others throughout each demanding day. Her morning visits to Brewster's establishment became sacred rituals that provided both the caffeine boost she needed to tackle complex administrative challenges and the few minutes of peaceful reflection that allowed her to approach her work with renewed enthusiasm and perspective. Brewster's ability to remember exactly how Isabel preferred her coffee, adjusting the strength and preparation method to match both her individual tastes and the particular demands of different types of days, demonstrated the kind of attentive service that made the Roost feel less like a commercial establishment and more like an extension of family hospitality. Whether she needed something light and energizing to start a busy day full of meetings and appointments, or something stronger and more substantial to help her focus on complex paperwork and detailed analysis, Brewster seemed to understand intuitively what would serve her best in any given moment. The conversations that developed between Isabel and Brewster during her regular visits revealed depths of wisdom and compassion in the quiet pigeon that helped explain his remarkable ability to serve his customers' needs with such precision and care. Despite his reserved nature and tendency toward minimal verbal communication, Brewster possessed an exceptional ability to listen deeply and understand the unspoken needs and concerns that his customers carried with them into his establishment. For Isabel, whose role often required her to maintain a cheerful and optimistic demeanor, even when dealing with frustrating situations or difficult personalities, the Roost provided a rare space where she could occasionally let her guard down and express the challenges and pressures she faced in her work. Brewster's patient listening and gentle encouragement became invaluable sources of support that helped her maintain her effectiveness and enthusiasm even during the most demanding periods of community life. The Roost also became Isabel's preferred location for informal meetings with community members who needed assistance with various administrative matters, or who wanted to discuss concerns or suggestions related to village governance and development. The establishment's atmosphere of calm professionalism and its reputation for discretion made it an ideal setting for the kind of sensitive conversations that required privacy and mutual trust. Among the most colorful and beloved regular customers was KK Slider, the wandering musician whose weekly performances had become one of the village's most cherished traditions and whose unique blend of musical talent, philosophical wisdom, and laid-back charisma had earned him friends and admirers throughout the region. K's relationship with the Roost reflected his bohemian lifestyle and artistic temperament, as he tended to arrive at irregular hours and stay for extended periods, treating the establishment as both creative workspace and social club. K discovered early in his relationship with the Roost that the combination of Brewster's exceptional coffee and the establishment's peaceful atmosphere created ideal conditions for musical creativity and composition. The subtle stimulation provided by perfectly prepared coffee seemed to enhance his ability to hear melodies and harmonies that might otherwise remain hidden, while the gentle background sounds of quiet conversation and the soft clink of cups and saucers provided a rhythmic foundation that inspired new musical ideas and arrangements. During his extended sessions at the Roost, KK would often work on new songs or arrangements, sketching out chord progressions and lyrics while sipping coffee and observing the ebb and flow of village life through the establishment's welcoming windows. These creative sessions became informal performances that delighted other customers, who would often pause in their own conversations to listen to fragments of new compositions being born in real time. Brewster's appreciation for KK's musical gifts led to a friendship that transcended the typical customer-proprietor relationship, as the two artists recognized in each other kindred spirits who understood the importance of dedication to craft and the pursuit of excellence in creative expression. KK's music and Brewster's coffee represented different art forms, but both required the same commitment to patience, practice, and attention to detail that separated true artistry from mere competent execution. The musician's regular presence at the Roost helped establish the establishment's reputation as a gathering place for creative individuals and artistic pursuits, attracting writers, painters, craftspeople, and other artists who appreciated both the quality of the coffee and the atmosphere of quiet inspiration that seemed to permeate the space. These artistic patrons brought their own unique energy and perspective to the Roost's growing community, creating an environment where creativity and contemplation could flourish side by side. Weekend performances at the establishment became legendary events that drew audiences from throughout the region, transforming the Roost into an intimate concert venue where the boundaries between performer and audience dissolved in shared appreciation for musical excellence and artistic expression. These performances represented perfect marriages of KK's musical gifts and Brewster's hospitality, creating experiences that lingered in memory long after the last notes had faded and the final cups had been cleared away. The Able sisters, Mabel and Sable, brought their own distinct flavors to the Roost's community of regulars, though their relationships with the establishment developed along different trajectories that reflected their individual personalities and approaches to life and work. The sisters operated the village's premier clothing and fabric shop with a combination of artistic vision, business acumen, and dedication to customer service that had made their establishment essential to community life and social expression. Mabel, the more outgoing and socially oriented of the two sisters, embraced the Roost as an extension of her natural habitat, a place where she could continue the conversations and relationship-building activities that were so essential to both her personal happiness and her business success. Her afternoon visits to Brewster's establishment often turned into extended social sessions, where she would catch up with friends, share news and gossip, and generally serve as a connecting link between different social circles and community groups. For Mabel, the Roost represented an opportunity to step away from the responsibilities of running a business while still remaining engaged with the community life that gave meaning and purpose to her work. The establishment's atmosphere encouraged the kind of relaxed, rambling conversations that allowed relationships to deepen and develop beyond the more focused interactions that characterized her professional encounters with customers and suppliers. Brewster's gentle and unobtrusive presence provided the perfect backdrop for Mabel's social activities, as his reserved nature and commitment to discreet service allowed conversations to flow naturally without the interruptions or artificial energy that might have disrupted the organic development of community connections. The quality of his coffee provided a shared experience that helped bring people together, while also offering an acceptable reason for extended socializing that might otherwise have seemed frivolous or self-indulgent. Sable, by contrast, initially approached the Roost with the same cautious reserve that characterized her interactions with most aspects of community social life, preferring the familiar routines and controlled environment of her workshop to the unpredictable dynamics of social gathering places. Her relationship with the establishment developed slowly and carefully, built on repeated positive experiences rather than immediate enthusiasm or natural social attraction. What eventually drew Sable to become a regular customer was her recognition that Brewster shared many of her own personality traits and approaches to life and work, including a preference for quiet competence over flashy self-promotion, a dedication to craft excellence that transcended mere commercial considerations, and a natural reserve that masked deep wells of compassion and wisdom. In Brewster, she found someone who understood the satisfaction that comes from patient, meticulous work, and the quiet pride that accompanies the creation of something truly excellent. Sable's visits to the Roost tended to occur during the establishment's quieter periods, when she could enjoy Brewster's coffee and the peaceful atmosphere, without having to navigate the social complexities that sometimes arose during busier times. These solitary interludes became precious opportunities for restoration and reflection, providing the mental and emotional space She needed to maintain her creativity and productivity during long days spent hunched over her sewing machine and cutting table. The friendship that eventually developed between Sable and Brewster was built on mutual respect and shared understanding rather than extensive conversation or dramatic declarations of connection. Both individuals appreciated the value of silence and the communication that could occur through careful attention to detail and consistent demonstration of care and consideration for others' needs and preferences. The seasonal rhythms that governed village life also influenced the patterns of patronage and community interaction at the Roost, as different times of year brought different needs, moods, and social dynamics that required subtle adjustments in both service and atmosphere. Brewster's sensitivity to these natural cycles and his ability to adapt his offerings and approach to match the changing requirements of the seasons became another dimension of his growing reputation for exceptional customer service and community awareness. During the busy harvest seasons, when farmers and gardeners worked long hours to gather and preserve the fruits of their year's labor, the Roost served as a vital rest stop where exhausted workers could find both physical refreshment and the social connection that helped sustain them through demanding physical work. Brewster would often prepare stronger, more substantial coffee blends during these periods, understanding that his customers needed maximum energy and endurance rather than subtle flavor experiences or contemplative atmospheres. The winter months brought different requirements and opportunities, as shorter days and colder weather created natural desires for warmth, comfort, and the kind of cozy gathering places that could provide refuge from harsh weather and seasonal isolation. During these periods, the Roost became even more central to community life, serving as a warming station for travelers caught in unexpected storms, and a social center where residents could maintain their connections with neighbors and friends despite weather that might otherwise keep them confined to their individual homes. Spring's arrival brought renewed energy and optimism to the Roost's community, as customers who had been sustained through winter's challenges by Brewster's coffee and hospitality emerged to share their plans and hopes for the growing season ahead. The establishment became a planning center where community projects and collaborative efforts were organized, its atmosphere of calm productivity providing ideal conditions for the kind of thoughtful discussion and careful coordination that successful group endeavors required. Summer's abundance and extended daylight hours created opportunities for expanded hours and special events at the Roost, as evening gatherings and outdoor celebrations allowed Brewster to experiment with different service formats and coffee presentations. These seasonal adaptations demonstrated his flexibility and creativity, while also showing his deep commitment to serving his community's evolving needs, rather than simply maintaining rigid routines that might have been easier to manage, but less responsive to the changing dynamics of village life. Throughout all these seasonal variations and community developments, what remained constant was Brewster's unwavering commitment to excellence in both his craft and his service to others. Every cup of coffee he prepared, regardless of the circumstances or the individual customer's specific requirements, received the same careful attention and dedication that had characterized his approach since his earliest days of apprenticeship and learning. This consistency of purpose and quality became one of the Roost's most valued and distinctive characteristics, creating a sense of reliability and trustworthiness that made the establishment feel like a stable anchor in a world where other aspects of life might be subject to unexpected changes or disruptions. Customers knew that regardless of what challenges or uncertainties they might be facing in other areas of their lives, they could always find excellence, peace, and genuine hospitality waiting for them at the Roost. The relationships Brewster built with these regular customers became the foundation not only for his business success but also for his own personal growth and development as both a coffee master and a member of his adopted community. Through countless conversations and shared experiences, through the quiet observations he made while serving others, and through the gradual deepening of trust and mutual respect that characterized his interactions with those who frequented his establishment, Brewster continued to refine his understanding of what it meant to serve others with genuine love and dedication. The transformation of the Roost from a simple coffee establishment into the beating heart of village life brought with it a continuous stream of new faces and fresh stories, as word of Brewster's exceptional coffee and welcoming atmosphere spread far beyond the boundaries of the peaceful community that had first embraced his vision. Each new customer who crossed the threshold of his establishment carried with them their own history, their own needs, and their own potential for the kind of meaningful connection that coffee culture had always been designed to foster and celebrate. Yet among all the varied souls who would eventually find their way to the Roost, none would prove more significant to Brewster's understanding of his craft and his role in the community than those special individuals who would eventually be known simply as residents, newcomers to village life, who arrived with little more than hope and determination, seeking to build new lives in a place where they could find both peace and purpose. These were souls in transition, individuals who had made the brave decision to leave behind whatever circumstances had previously defined their existence in order to pursue dreams of simpler, more meaningful lives centered around community, connection, and harmony with the natural world. The arrival of these new residents created unique opportunities and challenges for Brewster, as he found himself serving not merely as a coffee master, but also as an unofficial welcome committee, cultural interpreter, and gentle guide for individuals who often arrived feeling uncertain about their place in an established community with its own rhythms, traditions, and unspoken expectations. His position as keeper of the Roost made him a natural point of contact for newcomers seeking to understand village life and find their own roles within its complex social ecosystem. The first such resident to discover the Roost arrived on a crisp autumn morning when the air itself seemed to sparkle with possibility, and the golden light streaming through the establishment's windows created an atmosphere of warmth, an invitation that proved irresistible to someone still adjusting to the rhythms of their new home. This individual had spent their first several days in the village, focused on the practical necessities of settling into their new dwelling, organizing their belongings, and beginning to establish the basic routines that would structure their daily life in this unfamiliar but promising environment. When they finally ventured beyond the immediate concerns of domestic organization to explore the broader community that would become their new social world, the gentle aroma of perfectly brewed coffee guided them inevitably toward the Roost's welcoming entrance. The establishment's reputation had already reached them through casual conversations with neighbors and shopkeepers, but nothing they had heard had adequately prepared them for the profound sense of peace and possibility that enveloped them the moment they stepped through the door. Brewster's greeting was characteristically understated but unmistakably sincere, conveying through subtle gestures and careful attention to detail that this newcomer was not merely another customer, but a potential member of the extended family that gathered daily around the sacred ritual of shared coffee. Without need for extensive explanation or formal introduction, he seemed to understand intuitively that this individual was experiencing the particular mixture of excitement and apprehension that always accompanied major life transitions, and he adjusted his approach accordingly to provide exactly the kind of gentle welcome that could help transform uncertainty into confident anticipation. The coffee that Brewster prepared for this first encounter was chosen with particular care, selected not merely to demonstrate his technical skills, but to provide a comforting introduction to the standards of excellence and attention to detail that characterized all aspects of life at the Roost. He chose a blend that was approachable without being simplistic, complex enough to reward careful attention, but not so challenging as to overwhelm someone who might already be dealing with the cognitive load of adjusting to new surroundings and social dynamics. The conversation that developed during this initial visit was notable more for what was not said than for any specific information exchanged, as both Brewster and his new customer seemed to understand that the most important communication was occurring on levels that transcended mere words. The newcomer's gradual relaxation, visible in the softening of their posture and the increasing frequency of their smiles, provided all the feedback Brewster needed to confirm that his approach was achieving its intended effect of creating welcome and comfort. As the days and weeks passed, and this first resident established a pattern of regular visits to the Roost, Brewster began to observe the subtle ways in which the establishment was serving needs that went far beyond simple coffee consumption or social interaction. For someone still learning to navigate the complex social dynamics of village life, the Roost provided a safe space for observation and gradual integration, where they could witness the natural patterns of community interaction without feeling pressured to participate beyond their comfort level. The establishment's atmosphere of quiet acceptance and non-judgmental hospitality created ideal conditions for the kind of gradual confidence building that successful community integration required, allowing newcomers to test their social skills and cultural understanding in an environment where mistakes would be met with gentle correction rather than criticism or exclusion. Brewster's own reserved nature paradoxically made him an ideal facilitator for these delicate social processes, as his tendency toward minimal verbal interaction meant that customers could find their own pace and comfort level without feeling rushed or pressured to engage more extensively than felt natural. Over time, Brewster began to recognize patterns in how different types of newcomers approached the challenge of community integration, and he developed subtle techniques for tailoring his service and atmosphere to support each individual's particular needs and learning style. Some residents thrived on immediate social connection and used the Roost as a launching pad for building extensive networks of friendships and collaborative relationships, while others preferred to establish their individual routines and comfort zones before gradually expanding their social horizons. For those newcomers who arrived with gregarious personalities and natural social confidence, the Roost served as an ideal introduction to the village's key figures and social dynamics, providing numerous opportunities for the kind of casual conversations and chance encounters that could quickly establish them as valued members of the community. Brewster's extensive knowledge of his regular customers' interests, schedules, and personalities made him uniquely qualified to facilitate introductions and suggest connections that might not have occurred naturally, but which could prove mutually beneficial for all parties involved. These socially oriented newcomers often found themselves quickly integrated into existing social circles and community organizations, their enthusiasm and fresh perspectives providing valuable energy and new ideas to groups that might have become somewhat stagnant or insular over time. Their presence at the Roost brought additional vitality and diversity to the establishment's daily rhythms, creating more dynamic and engaging environments for all customers, while also demonstrating the village's capacity for growth and positive change. Other residents arrived with more cautious or introspective personalities, individuals who preferred to observe and understand before actively participating in community life. For these more reserved souls, the Roost provided an ideal environment for gradual acclimatization, where they could become familiar with local customs and social expectations without feeling exposed or vulnerable during their learning process. Brewster's natural empathy for fellow introverts made him particularly effective at serving these quieter newcomers, as he understood intuitively the difference between shyness that would eventually be overcome and fundamental temperamental preferences that should be respected and accommodated rather than challenged or changed. His ability to provide excellent service while maintaining appropriate social distance created safe spaces where reserved individuals could enjoy community connection without feeling overwhelmed by excessive attention or expectations for immediate social integration. These more contemplative residents often became some of the Roost's most valued customers, as their natural tendency toward careful observation and thoughtful analysis made them particularly appreciative of the subtle qualities and careful craftsmanship that distinguished Brewster's coffee from ordinary commercial beverages. Their gradual integration into village life proceeded at a more measured pace, but often resulted in deeper and more lasting connections with selected members of the community who shared their appreciation for quiet excellence and meaningful conversation. The seasonal cycles that governed village life created natural rhythms and opportunities for resident integration, as different times of year brought different community activities and social expectations that could serve as entry points for newcomers seeking to find their places within the established social structure. Spring's arrival, with its emphasis on new beginnings and fresh starts, created particularly favorable conditions for resident integration, as the entire community seemed energized by renewal and growth that made everyone more receptive to new faces and fresh perspectives. During these periods of seasonal transition, the Roost often became the unofficial headquarters for planning and organizing community projects and celebrations that required the kind of collaborative effort that could help newcomers establish their roles and demonstrate their contributions to village life. Whether the focus was on organizing spring festivals, coordinating summer recreational activities, planning autumn harvest celebrations, or preparing for winter's challenges, these collective endeavors provided natural opportunities for residents to find their niches and build the working relationships that would eventually deepen into lasting friendships. Brewster's role in facilitating these seasonal activities evolved naturally from his position as keeper of the Roost, as the establishment's central location and welcoming atmosphere made it an ideal gathering place for the kind of informal planning sessions and spontaneous collaborations that often produced the most successful and memorable community events. His ability to remember individual preferences and accommodate diverse needs made him invaluable for organizing gatherings that could successfully include participants with different backgrounds, interests, and comfort levels. The coffee service that accompanied these planning sessions became integral to their success, as the shared experience of enjoying perfectly prepared beverages created bonds of common appreciation and mutual respect that helped bridge differences in personality, background, or approach to community involvement. The ritual of sharing coffee also provided natural breaks and transitions that helped maintain focus and energy during extended discussions, while also creating opportunities for side conversations and relationship building that might not have occurred in more formal meeting environments. As the Roost's reputation for excellent coffee and exceptional hospitality continued to spread throughout the region, it began attracting visitors and potential residents from increasingly distant communities, individuals who had heard stories of the remarkable establishment and the peaceful village that surrounded it. These prospective newcomers often arrived with high expectations and specific hopes about what they might find, creating both opportunities and challenges for Brewster as he worked to provide honest representations of village life while also maintaining the welcoming atmosphere that had made the Roost so successful. The conversations that developed between Brewster and these potential residents often took on the character of informal counseling sessions as individuals seeking major life changes found themselves drawn to share their motivations, concerns, and aspirations with someone who had clearly found his own path to meaningful work and community connection. Brewster's ability to listen without judgment, while offering gentle insights based on his own experience and observations, made these interactions valuable for both parties, providing guidance for those considering major transitions, while also deepening his understanding of the forces and desires that drew people toward village life. Through these conversations with prospective residents, Brewster gained deeper appreciation for the courage required to make major life changes and the various circumstances that could motivate individuals to seek new environments and communities. Some arrived fleeing negative situations or relationships that had become unsustainable, while others were drawn by positive visions of what their lives could become in more supportive and harmonious environments. Understanding these different motivations helped Brewster tailor his welcome and support to match each newcomer's particular needs and circumstances, providing additional encouragement and reassurance for those who had overcome significant challenges to reach village life, while also helping to manage expectations for those who might have unrealistic hopes about what community living could or should provide. The process of helping newcomers adjust to village rhythms and expectations also contributed to Brewster's own continued growth and development as both a coffee master and a community member. Each new perspective and fresh set of questions challenged him to articulate and examine aspects of village life and coffee culture that he might otherwise have taken for granted, leading to deeper understanding of the principles and practices that made both his establishment and his community successful. The relationships he built with residents during their early days of community integration often evolved into some of his most meaningful and lasting friendships, as the combination of his supportive presence during vulnerable transitions and their gratitude for his guidance created bonds that transcended ordinary customer-proprietor dynamics. These deeper connections enriched both his personal life and his professional understanding, providing insights into human nature and community dynamics that enhanced his ability to serve all of his customers with greater wisdom and compassion. The seasonal patterns of resident arrival and integration also created opportunities for more established community members to participate in the welcoming process, as regular customers at the Roost often found themselves naturally drawn into conversations with newcomers and gradually took on informal mentorship roles that helped distribute the work of community integration across a broader network. Supportive relationships. This organic development of welcome networks centered around the Roost created a self-reinforcing cycle of community strength and hospitality that made the village increasingly attractive to potential residents, while also providing established community members with renewed appreciation for their own choices and circumstances. The regular infusion of fresh energy and new perspectives helped prevent the kind of stagnation or insularity that sometimes affected isolated communities, while the careful integration process ensured that growth occurred in ways that strengthened rather than diluted existing community values and traditions. As the years passed and the Roost's role in resident integration became more established and recognized, Brewster began to develop more sophisticated understanding of the complex dynamics involved in successful community building and the various factors that could support or undermine efforts to create inclusive and harmonious social environments. His position at the intersection of individual and community needs provided unique insights into the delicate balance required to maintain village life that was both stable and adaptable, traditional and innovative, welcoming to newcomers and faithful to established values. These insights influenced not only his approach to serving individual customers, but also his understanding of his broader role within the community structure and his responsibilities as someone whose establishment had become integral to the village's ongoing health and development. The success of the Roost had made him not merely a business owner, but a community leader whose decisions and actions could influence the direction and character of village life for years to come. The trust that residents placed in him during their vulnerable early days of community adjustment created both privileges and responsibilities that Brewster accepted with characteristic grace and dedication. He understood that his establishment had become more than a coffee house, and that his role extended far beyond that of coffee master, to encompass the broader function of community builder and keeper of the social spaces where village life could flourish and evolve. Throughout all the years of building relationships and creating community around the sacred ritual of coffee service, through countless interactions with regular customers and welcoming newcomers alike, Brewster had maintained one aspect of his personal and professional life in complete privacy, guarding it with the same careful discretion that he brought to the most sensitive conversations and confidential matters that were sometimes shared within the peaceful walls of the Roost. This was his most closely held tradition, his deepest expression of trust and friendship, and perhaps the most profound demonstration of the ancient pigeon customs that had been passed down through generations of his ancestors like precious heirlooms carried forward through time. The tradition of pigeon milk represented something far more significant than any casual observer could possibly understand, without deep knowledge of pigeon culture and the sacred meanings that certain practices held within the broader context of community relationships and spiritual expression. To those unfamiliar with these ancient customs, the very concept might seem strange or even slightly unsettling, but within the proper cultural framework, it represented one of the most beautiful and meaningful gestures of trust, friendship, and ultimate hospitality that could be offered by one soul to another. Pigeon milk was not merely a beverage or simple refreshment, but a substance that carried within it the very essence of life force and nurturing care, produced through biological processes that required tremendous energy and commitment from the individual pigeon who chose to create this precious gift. The ability to produce pigeon milk was not something that could be summoned at will or manufactured through artificial means, but rather emerged from deep wells of emotional connection and spiritual dedication that transformed the ordinary processes of daily existence into something approaching the sacred. The preparation and offering of pigeon milk required not only physical capability, but also emotional and spiritual preparation that aligned the giver's entire being with the highest ideals of service and self-sacrifice. This was not something that could be undertaken lightly or offered casually, as the process demanded the kind of complete commitment and focused intention that transformed routine biological functions into expressions of profound love and dedication to the welfare of others. Throughout his years of coffee service at the Roost, Brewster had encountered many individuals who had earned his respect, appreciation, and even genuine affection through their consistent demonstration of character, kindness, and mutual respect for the values and traditions that he held most dear. Yet among all these worthy souls, only a select few had achieved the level of trust and connection that would justify the offering of pigeon milk, the ultimate expression of acceptance and friendship that represented the deepest possible bond between pigeon and friend. The selection of individuals who would receive this honor was not based on any formal criteria or conscious evaluation process, but rather emerged from the accumulated weight of countless interactions, shared experiences, and demonstrations of character that gradually built trust and connection to levels that transcended ordinary friendship or professional relationship. These were souls who had proven through their actions rather than their words that they understood and respected the deeper meanings behind coffee service and community building. individuals whose presence in his life had become integral to his understanding of what it meant to serve others with genuine love and dedication. The first individual to receive the honor of pigeon milk from Brewster was someone whose relationship with the roost had evolved over many seasons, from casual customer to trusted regular to something approaching family membership, demonstrated through countless small gestures of consideration, respect, and mutual support that had created bonds far stronger than those typically found between business proprietor and customer. This was someone who had witnessed Brewster through various challenges and celebrations, who had offered support during difficult periods and shared joy during moments of triumph, and who had consistently demonstrated the kind of character and integrity that made them worthy of the deepest trust. The moment when Brewster first realized that this individual had achieved the status that would justify offering pigeon milk came not through dramatic revelation or sudden inspiration, but rather through the gradual recognition that their relationship had evolved to encompass levels of trust and mutual care that warranted acknowledgement through this ancient and sacred tradition. The decision to extend this invitation was not made lightly or impulsively, but rather emerged from careful consideration of all the factors that made such an offering appropriate and meaningful. The preparation of pigeon milk required Brewster to enter into a state of physical and spiritual readiness that demanded several days of careful attention to diet, rest, and mental preparation, ensuring that the substance he would offer would be worthy of the trust and friendship that its presentation was intended to honor. This preparation period also served as a time for reflection and meditation on the significance of what he was about to do, the traditions he was continuing, and the relationship he was acknowledging through this ultimate expression of hospitality. The actual offering of pigeon milk took place during one of the quieter periods at the Roost, when the establishment's peaceful atmosphere and relative privacy created appropriate conditions for such a significant and intimate gesture. The presentation was made without fanfare or extensive explanation, as Brewster understood that the true meaning of the gift would be communicated through its quality and the sincerity with which it was offered, rather than through elaborate verbal expressions or dramatic ceremonial elements. The recipient's response to this unprecedented offering revealed depths of understanding and appreciation that confirmed Brewster's judgment in selecting them for this honor, as they seemed to grasp intuitively the significance of what was being shared and the trust that its presentation represented. The quiet acceptance and genuine gratitude with which the gift was received created one of those perfect moments of human connection that justify years of patient relationship building and careful attention to the subtle dynamics of friendship and mutual respect. The sharing of pigeon milk created a bond between Brewster and this individual that transcended all previous levels of their relationship, establishing them as something approaching family members whose connection was based not merely on shared interests or compatible personalities, but on fundamental trust and mutual commitment to each other's welfare and happiness. This new dimension of their relationship influenced all subsequent interactions, creating an undercurrent of deep connection and understanding that enhanced every conversation and shared experience. Word of this extraordinary honor never spread beyond the immediate participants, as both Brewster and the recipient understood instinctively that such sacred traditions were meant to be preserved through discretion and privacy, rather than public recognition or social display. The significance of what had been shared lay precisely in its intimate and personal nature, its separation from the more public aspects of coffee, culture, and community interaction that characterized most of the Roost's daily activities. Over the years that followed this first offering of pigeon milk, Brewster would occasionally extend similar honors to other individuals whose relationships with him had achieved comparable levels of trust and mutual respect. But these occasions remained rare and special, reserved for connections that had proven themselves through the kind of long-term consistency and demonstrated character that justified such profound expressions of friendship and acceptance. Each offering of pigeon milk represented a unique moment in Brewster's personal and professional development, as the process of identifying worthy recipients and preparing appropriate presentations required him to reflect deeply on the nature of friendship, trust, and the various ways that individuals could demonstrate their worthiness for the highest levels of confidence and connection. These reflections contributed to his growing understanding of human nature and community dynamics, insights that enhanced his ability to serve all of his customers with greater wisdom and compassion. The tradition of pigeon milk also connected Brewster to his own ancestral heritage in ways that his daily coffee service, meaningful though it was, could not fully encompass. Through the preparation and offering of this ancient gift, he participated in customs that linked him to countless generations of pigeons who had used similar expressions of trust and friendship to build and maintain the social bonds that held their communities together across the challenges and changes of historical time. The physical process of producing pigeon milk required Brewster to access and channel aspects of his biological and spiritual nature that were normally dormant or unexpressed, creating connections between mind, body, and spirit that enhanced his overall sense of integration and wholeness. These periods of preparation and production became times of deep personal renewal that contributed to his continued growth and development as both individual and community member. The recipients of pigeon milk often reported that the experience of receiving and consuming this sacred substance created lasting changes in their understanding of friendship, community, and the various ways that individuals could express care and commitment to each other's welfare. The trust that was represented by such offerings seemed to open new dimensions of relationship and connection that influenced all aspects of their subsequent interactions with both Brewster and the broader community that surrounded Roost. The rarity and significance of pigeon milk offerings also served to emphasize the special nature of the relationships that merited such recognition, creating clear distinctions between casual friendships, Balued regular customers, and the select few who had achieved the status of chosen family members, worthy of the deepest trust and most profound expressions of care and commitment. These distinctions were never expressed through differential treatment in daily coffee service or public interactions, as Brewster maintained his commitment to treating all customers with equal respect and attention to their individual needs and preferences. The special bonds created through pigeon milk sharing remained private and personal, influencing the depth and quality of individual relationships without creating visible hierarchies or exclusive social circles that might have disrupted the inclusive and welcoming atmosphere that had made the Roost so successful. The tradition also served as a reminder of the deeper purposes and meanings that underlay all of Brewster's work at the Roost, connecting his daily activities as coffee master to broader traditions of hospitality, service, and community building that extended far beyond commercial considerations or professional recognition. The preparation and offering of pigeon milk represented the ultimate expression of the values and principles that had guided his entire approach to coffee service and community engagement from his earliest days of training and preparation. As the years passed and Brewster's understanding of these ancient traditions deepened through continued practice and reflection, he began to appreciate more fully the wisdom of his ancestors who had developed and preserved customs that could create such profound bonds of trust and mutual commitment between individuals from different backgrounds and circumstances. The tradition of pigeon milk represented a form of social technology that could bridge differences and create lasting connections in ways that ordinary conversation or shared activities could not achieve. The maintenance of these traditions also required Brewster to balance his respect for ancient customs with his commitment to serving the evolving needs of his contemporary community, ensuring that his preservation of Pidgin heritage never interfered with his primary mission of creating welcoming and inclusive environments where all souls could find refreshment, connection, and the kinds of meaningful relationships that made community life fulfilling and sustainable. Through the careful and thoughtful application of the pigeon milk tradition, Brewster had created a small but significant network of individuals whose bonds with him and with each other represented the strongest and most enduring connections within the broader community that gathered around the roost. These relationships served as anchors and examples that helped maintain the establishment's atmosphere of trust and mutual respect, even during periods of change or challenge that might have disrupted less solidly grounded social environments. The wisdom and discretion with which Brewster approached these sacred traditions had also earned him deeper respect within the broader pigeon community. As word gradually spread among his own people of his faithful preservation and appropriate application of customs that were in danger of being forgotten or abandoned by younger generations, more focused on adaptation to modern circumstances than on maintaining connections to ancestral wisdom and practice. Beyond the carefully curated public spaces of the roost, beyond the gentle conversations and perfect coffee service that had made Brewster beloved throughout his adopted village, there existed another dimension of his life that remained hidden from even his closest friends and most trusted customers. This was a realm of private passion and personal fascination that revealed depths to his character that would have surprised those who knew him only through his professional role as coffee master and community gathering point. In the quiet hours after the roost had closed for the evening, when the last customers had departed with expressions of gratitude and contentment, when the final cups had been washed and carefully stored away until the next day's service could begin, Brewster would often retreat to a small chamber adjacent to his main living quarters that he had gradually transformed into something that was part museum, part workshop, and part sacred space, dedicated to his most personal and absorbing interest. This hidden sanctuary was devoted to his collection of gyroids, those mysterious and ancient artifacts whose origins remained shrouded in mystery despite the countless hours of study and contemplation that Brewster had devoted to understanding their true nature and significance. To casual observers, gyroids might appear to be nothing more than curious clay figurines, oddly shaped objects that bore some resemblance to primitive sculptures or ritual items created by unknown civilizations in distant ages past. Yet to those who possessed the sensitivity and patience necessary for deeper understanding, gyroids revealed themselves as something far more complex and meaningful than their humble appearance might initially suggest. They were vessels of memory and emotion, repositories of experiences and energies that had somehow been captured and preserved within their earthen forms through processes that defied conventional explanation or scientific analysis. Brewster's fascination with these enigmatic objects had begun during his earliest days of coffee apprenticeship, when he had first encountered a small collection of gyroids in the home of an elderly mentor who had spoken of them with the same reverence and careful attention that he brought to the finest coffee beans or the most precious brewing equipment. The old coffee master had explained that gyroids possessed the remarkable ability to absorb and reflect the emotional atmospheres in which they were placed, serving as both barometers of spiritual climate and generators of particular moods and energies that could enhance or diminish the quality of human experience in their vicinity. This initial introduction had planted seeds of curiosity and wonder that had grown steadily throughout Brewster's subsequent years of training and development, leading him to seek out opportunities to study and acquire gyroids whenever his travels brought him into contact with collectors, archaeologists, or other individuals who possessed knowledge of these mysterious artifacts. Each new gyroid that entered his collection brought with it fresh puzzles and possibilities for understanding, expanding his appreciation for the complexity and subtlety of these ancient creations. The process of acquiring gyroids required patience, discretion, and considerable financial resources, as authentic specimens were rare and highly valued by the small community of serious collectors who understood their true significance. Many supposed gyroids that appeared in common markets or casual sales were revealed upon careful examination to be modern reproductions or crude imitations that lacked the subtle energetic properties that distinguished genuine artifacts from mere decorative objects. Brewster had developed over the years a sophisticated ability to recognize authentic gyroids through careful observation of their form, texture, and the almost indefinable quality of presence that genuine specimens possessed. This skill had been refined through countless hours of study and handling, through conversations with other collectors and experts, and through the kind of deep, intuitive understanding that could only be developed through passionate dedication to a particular area of knowledge and experience. His collection had grown slowly but steadily, each edition carefully considered and thoroughly researched before being incorporated into the growing assemblage that filled his private sanctuary with their mysterious presence. Some gyroids had been acquired through formal channels, purchased from reputable dealers, or obtained through exchanges with other collectors who shared his commitment to serious study and preservation of these ancient artifacts. Others had come to him through more serendipitous circumstances, discovered in forgotten corners of antique shops or inherited from elderly villagers who had possessed them for generations without fully understanding their significance or value. These chance acquisitions often proved to be among the most interesting and powerful specimens in his collection, as if fate itself was guiding particularly meaningful artifacts towards someone who would appreciate and care for them properly. The arrangement and display of his gyroids within the sanctuary space had evolved over many years through careful experimentation and observation. As Brewster gradually learned how different specimens interacted with each other, and with the overall energy and atmosphere of the room, some gyroids seemed to amplify the effects of their neighbors, creating harmonious combinations that enhanced the peaceful and contemplative qualities that made the space ideal for meditation and reflection. Others appeared to function best in isolation, their individual energies too strong or distinctive to blend comfortably with the influences of nearby artifacts. These solitary specimens were given places of honor where their unique qualities could be fully appreciated without interference or dilution from competing influences. The sanctuary itself had been designed and furnished with the same attention to detail and commitment to excellence that characterized all aspects of Brewster's life and work, creating an environment that was worthy of the precious objects it contained, while also serving his needs for study, contemplation, and restoration. Soft lighting cast gentle shadows that emphasized the subtle textures and flowing lines of the gyroids, while comfortable seating provided opportunities for extended periods of observation and meditation. The walls were lined with carefully crafted shelving that displayed the collection in ways that honored both the individual beauty of each piece and the overall harmony of the assembled whole, creating visual compositions that changed and evolved as new acquisitions were integrated and existing arrangements were refined through ongoing experimentation and aesthetic development. During his private hours in this sacred space, Brewster would often spend long periods simply sitting among his gyroids, allowing their subtle influences to wash over him, while he reflected on the events and experiences of his daily work at the Roost. These sessions of quiet communion with his collection served as crucial opportunities for mental and emotional restoration, helping him maintain the inner peace and clarity that enabled him to serve his customers with consistent excellence and genuine compassion. The gyroids seemed to possess the remarkable ability to absorb and transform the stress and fatigue that naturally accumulated during days filled with social interaction and the constant attention to detail that quality coffee service required. In their presence, Brewster could feel the tension leaving his body and mind, replaced by a sense of deep tranquility and renewed energy that prepared him for whatever challenges the following day might bring. More than mere stress relief, however, the time spent among his gyroids provided opportunities for the kind of deep introspection and self-examination that kept Brewster connected to his core values and highest aspirations as both coffee master and community member. The mysterious energies of his collection seemed to facilitate access to wisdom and insights that might otherwise have remained buried beneath the demands and distractions of daily life, helping him maintain perspective on the deeper purposes and meanings that guided his work and relationships. The individual gyroids in his collection had been acquired over such an extended period and under such varied circumstances that each one carried with it specific memories and associations that connected it to particular phases of his personal and professional development. Some specimens reminded him of mentors and teachers who had shaped his understanding of coffee culture and community service, while others recalled pivotal moments of decision or discovery that had influenced the direction of his life's work. These personal associations gave each gyroid significance that went far beyond its intrinsic value as an artifact or collector's item, transforming the collection into a kind of three-dimensional autobiography that chronicled his journey from eager apprentice to master craftsman and respected community leader. The sanctuary thus served not only as a place of current restoration and reflection, but also as a repository of memory and experience that helped him maintain connections to all the influences and relationships that had contributed to his ongoing growth and development. The study of gyroids had also provided Brewster with intellectual challenges and opportunities for learning that complemented and enhanced his primary focus on coffee culture and service excellence. The historical research required to understand the origins and cultural contexts of different specimens had expanded his knowledge of ancient civilizations and artistic traditions, while the careful observation necessary to appreciate their subtle energetic properties had refined his sensitivity and perceptual abilities in ways that enhanced all aspects of his daily work. The discipline required to maintain and care for such a delicate and valuable collection had reinforced habits of patience, precision, and careful attention to detail that served him well in every aspect of his professional and personal life. The knowledge that his gyroids required specific environmental conditions and handling procedures to maintain their integrity and effectiveness had made him even more conscious of the importance of creating and maintaining optimal conditions for all forms of excellence and beauty. The intersection between his gyroid collecting and his coffee service became apparent to Brewster through gradual recognition that both activities shared fundamental principles and approaches that reflected deeper aspects of his character and worldview. Both required patience, dedication, and the ability to perceive subtle qualities that might escape casual observation, while both offered opportunities to create beauty and meaning through careful attention to detail and genuine appreciation for excellence in all its forms. The contemplative practices that he had developed through years of gyroid study proved invaluable for maintaining the inner peace and focused attention that enabled him to serve his customers with consistent excellence and genuine care. The ability to enter states of deep quietude and receptive awareness that he had cultivated in his sanctuary enhanced his capacity for the kind of intuitive understanding of others' needs and preferences that had made his coffee service legendary throughout the region. The financial resources required to maintain and expand his gyroid collection had provided additional motivation for the commercial success of the Roost, creating a positive feedback loop where excellence in coffee service generated the means to pursue personal passions that in turn enhanced his ability to serve his community with even greater skill and dedication. This integration of personal interests and professional responsibilities demonstrated the kind of holistic approach to life and work that characterized all of Brewster's most important decisions and commitments. The secrecy that surrounded his gyroid collecting was not motivated by shame or embarrassment about his interests, but rather by understanding that some aspects of personal life were best preserved through privacy and discretion rather than public sharing and discussion. The sanctuary and its contents represented realms of experience and meaning that were too precious and personal to be casually displayed or explained to those who might not possess the background or sensitivity necessary for proper appreciation and understanding. This careful protection of his private passions also reflected Brewster's wisdom in maintaining boundaries between different aspects of his life and identity, ensuring that his role as coffee master and community gathering point was not complicated or compromised by unrelated interests that might confuse or distract from his primary mission of service excellence and community building. The knowledge that he possessed this rich inner life and these private sources of inspiration and restoration gave Brewster additional confidence and resilience in facing the challenges and responsibilities of his public role. While the discipline and insights gained through gyroid study continued to enhance his effectiveness and satisfaction in all areas of his life and work, through the patient cultivation of this hidden passion, Brewster had created for himself a source of renewal and growth that would sustain him through whatever changes and challenges the future might bring, ensuring that his service to others would continue to flow from wells of inner richness and authentic personal fulfillment that could never be depleted or diminished by external circumstances or demands. The passage of seasons had always held special significance in the peaceful village that had become Brewster's chosen home, but nowhere was this natural rhythm more evident or more deeply appreciated than within the welcoming walls of the Roost, where the changing cycles of weather and light created constantly shifting moods and opportunities that kept both the establishment and its devoted community of regular customers engaged with the eternal dance between permanence and change that defined all life in harmony with the natural world. Each season brought its own unique gifts and challenges to the Roost's daily operations, requiring Brewster to adapt his coffee selections, brewing techniques, and service approaches to match the evolving needs and preferences of customers whose spirits and bodies responded instinctively to the subtle signals that marked the transitions between winter's introspective quietude, spring's energetic renewal, summer's abundant vitality, and autumn's contemplative preparation for the cycle's inevitable return to its beginning. Spring's arrival in the village was always marked by subtle changes that began long before the official calendar dates or dramatic weather shifts announced the new season's presence to casual observers. Brewster, whose years of careful attention to the rhythms of his community and the natural world that surrounded it had made him extraordinarily sensitive to such transitions, would often detect the first stirrings of seasonal change through almost imperceptible shifts in the quality of morning light, the behavior patterns of his regular customers, and his own deep intuitive sense of the energetic currents that flowed through all living things. The lengthening days that preceded spring's full emergence created opportunities for extended morning hours at the Roost, as customers who had grown accustomed to brief winter visits began lingering over their coffee to enjoy the gradually increasing warmth and brightness that streamed through the establishment's carefully positioned windows. These extended morning sessions became opportunities for deeper conversations and stronger relationship building, as the improved weather and increased daylight seemed to lift spirits and encourage the kind of open communication that had always been one of the Roost's greatest contributions to community life. Brewster's coffee selections during spring reflected both his understanding of seasonal preferences and his commitment to supporting his customers' natural responses to changing environmental conditions. The heavier, more warming blends that had sustained the community through winter's challenges gave way to lighter, more energizing options that matched the increased activity levels and optimistic outlook that typically accompanied the season of renewal and new beginnings. He would introduce new single-origin coffees that had been carefully selected and stored throughout the winter months. Their bright acidity and complex flavor profiles, providing perfect complements to the fresh energy and heightened awareness that characterized spring consciousness. These seasonal offerings became anticipated events that marked the progression of the year and provided regular customers with new experiences to anticipate and savor. The preparation techniques that Brewster employed during spring also reflected his sensitivity to seasonal requirements and opportunities, with brewing methods that emphasized clarity and brightness rather than the deeper, more sustaining qualities that winter coffee service had prioritized. The water temperatures, extraction times, and serving presentations were all adjusted to create coffee experiences that supported and enhanced the natural enthusiasm and forward-looking perspective that spring inspired in most individuals. Spring also brought increased interest in outdoor seating arrangements and garden settings that could extend the Roost's influence beyond its interior spaces, allowing customers to enjoy perfect coffee while experiencing direct connection with the natural renewal that was occurring throughout the village and surrounding countryside. Brewster collaborated with local gardeners and landscape artists to create outdoor spaces that complemented the Roost's interior atmosphere, while providing unique opportunities for coffee appreciation in settings that changed and lane guests evolved with the advancing season. The transition into summer marked perhaps the most dramatic shift in the Roost's seasonal operations, as the combination of increased temperatures, extended daylight hours, and heightened social activity throughout the village created both challenges and opportunities that required significant adaptations in service approaches and customer accommodation strategies. The establishment's interior spaces, so perfectly suited for the intimate gatherings and contemplative atmospheres that characterized cooler seasons, needed to be reimagined and reconfigured to provide comfort and appeal during the year's most active and socially intensive period. Brewster's summer coffee innovations included the development of exceptional iced coffee preparations that maintained all the complexity and excellence of his hot brewing, while providing the cooling refreshment that warmer weather demanded. These cold brewing techniques, which had required extensive experimentation and refinement over several seasons, eventually produced beverages that were recognized throughout the region as setting the standards for iced coffee excellence. The extended evening hours that summer's longer days made possible allowed the Roost to serve community needs that were impossible to address during other seasons, hosting gatherings and events that brought together larger and more diverse groups of people than the establishment's normal daily operations could accommodate. These summer evening sessions often featured musical performances, poetry readings, and other cultural activities that transformed the Roost into a true community center where artistic expression and social connection could flourish alongside traditional coffee service. The increased tourist and visitor traffic that summer brought to the village created opportunities for the Roost to share its excellence and hospitality with individuals from distant communities, spreading awareness of both the establishment's exceptional quality and the village's unique character to audiences who might never otherwise have experienced such concentrated demonstrations of community, harmony, and cooperative living. These visitor interactions often led to lasting relationships and repeat visits that enriched both the Roost's customer base and the village's broader network of connections and influences. Summer's abundance also provided opportunities for Brewster to collaborate with local farmers and producers in ways that were impossible during other seasons, incorporating fresh ingredients and seasonal specialties into coffee presentations that celebrated the region's agricultural excellence while supporting the economic sustainability of community food systems. These collaborations strengthened the Roost's integration into the village's economic and social networks, while providing customers with unique experiences that connected their coffee consumption to the broader cycles of local production and seasonal availability. The transition into autumn brought with it a gradual shift in mood and focus that was reflected in every aspect of the Roost's operations, as the community began preparing for winter's challenges, while also celebrating the harvest abundance that rewarded their year's agricultural and artistic efforts. This season of gathering and preservation created opportunities for community cooperation and mutual support that found natural expression in the Roost's welcoming spaces and collaborative atmosphere. Brewster's autumn coffee selections emphasized warmth, comfort, and the kind of sustained satisfaction that would help community members maintain energy and optimism as daylight hours decreased and temperatures began their inevitable descent toward winter's demanding conditions. The return to heavier, more complex blends was accompanied by brewing techniques that maximized the extraction of oils and compounds that provided both physical warming and emotional comfort. During the season's increasingly challenging weather conditions, the harvest celebrations that marked autumn's progression provided opportunities for the Roost to serve as headquarters for community planning and organization, as committees responsible for winter preparations, holiday celebrations, and resource distribution found the establishment's peaceful atmosphere and excellent refreshments ideal for the kind of detailed planning and collaborative decision-making that successful community management required during transitional seasons. Autumn also marked the return of many migrant community members who had spent summer months traveling, working in distant locations, or visiting family and friends in other regions, creating joyful reunion opportunities that filled the Roost with stories, laughter, and the kind of enthusiastic conversation that could only emerge when separated friends and family members were finally able to share their experiences and reconnect with the community relationships that anchored their sense of identity and belonging. The approach of winter brought its own unique requirements and opportunities to the Roost's seasonal operations, as shortened daylight hours and increasingly challenging weather conditions created needs for warmth, comfort, and social connection that were more intense and essential than during any other season. The establishment's role as community gathering place became even more critical during winter months, when harsh weather could isolate individuals and families for extended periods, making the Roost's welcoming spaces and reliable hospitality literally essential for community survival and well-being. Brewster's winter coffee service reached its most sophisticated and nurturing expressions during this season, when the combination of physical cold and psychological challenges created customer needs that required the highest levels of technical excellence and emotional sensitivity. The coffee blends he featured during winter months were selected and prepared to provide maximum warming effects, sustained energy, and the kind of deep satisfaction that could help individuals maintain hope and resilience during the year's most demanding period. The brewing techniques employed during winter emphasized full extraction and rich complexity, creating beverages that provided not merely caffeine and warmth, but also the kind of sensory pleasure an emotional comfort that could serve as antidotes to the season's natural tendencies toward depression, isolation, and despair. Every cup served during winter months was prepared with the understanding that it might represent one of the few bright moments in a customer's otherwise challenging day. Winter's social dynamics also created unique opportunities for the Roost to facilitate the kind of deep conversation and intimate connection that were difficult to achieve during busier, more socially active seasons, as smaller groups of dedicated community members gathered for extended sessions of discussion, planning, and mutual support that strengthened relationships and built the social capital necessary for successful community functioning during challenging periods. The holiday celebrations that punctuated winter's progression provided opportunities for the Roost to serve as venue and catalyst for community traditions that brought together individuals and families who might otherwise have limited social contact during the season's isolating conditions. These gatherings often featured special coffee preparations, traditional foods, and entertainment that celebrated both the community's cultural heritage and its ongoing capacity for joy and mutual support despite external challenges. Throughout all these seasonal variations and adaptations, what remained constant was Brewster's commitment to excellence in both coffee preparation and community service. His understanding that his role extended far beyond mere beverage provision to encompass the broader functions of social facilitation, cultural preservation, and community building that made civilized life possible. In environments where cooperation and mutual support were essential for survival and prosperity. The seasonal cycles also provided Brewster with natural rhythms for his own personal renewal and professional development, as the changing requirements and opportunities of each season challenged him to expand his skills, deepen his understanding of customer needs, and develop new approaches to coffee service that could meet evolving community requirements while maintaining the standards of excellence that had made the Roost legendary throughout the region. The accumulated wisdom gained through many years of seasonal adaptation had made Brewster's understanding of coffee culture and community dynamics increasingly sophisticated and effective, enabling him to anticipate customer needs, prepare for seasonal challenges, and create experiences that enhanced rather than merely served the natural rhythms of community life and individual growth that defined his village's unique character and enduring success. The integration of seasonal awareness into every aspect of the Roost's operations had also created a model for sustainable business practices that other establishments throughout the region began studying and adapting to their own circumstances, spreading the influence of Brewster's innovations and philosophy far beyond the boundaries of his immediate community, while contributing to broader movements toward more harmonious relationships between commercial activities and natural cycles. As the years flowed by like gentle streams carrying fallen leaves toward distant horizons, as seasons turned in their eternal dance, and countless cups of perfect coffee found their way into grateful hands throughout the peaceful village that had become his chosen home, Brewster began to understand that his life's work had achieved something far more significant and enduring than he had ever dared to imagine during those early days of uncertainty and hopeful planning when the Roost existed only as a vision waiting to be transformed into reality. The quiet pigeon, who had once searched desperately for the right location and the proper opportunity to express his dedication to the ancient art of coffee service, had become, through patient accumulation of countless small acts of excellence and kindness, something approaching a legendary figure whose influence extended far beyond the physical boundaries of his modest establishment to touch the lives of individuals and communities throughout the entire region that surrounded his adopted village home. Yet this recognition and the profound respect that accompanied it had come to him not through dramatic gestures or self-promotional activities, but rather through the steady demonstration of values and principles that had remained unchanged since his earliest days of apprenticeship and learning. The same commitment to excellence, the same attention to detail, the same genuine care for the welfare and happiness of others that had motivated his initial decision to dedicate his life to coffee service continued to guide every aspect of his daily work and community relationships, creating a consistency of purpose and character that had earned him trust and admiration from all who had experienced his hospitality. The Roost itself had evolved over the years from a simple coffee establishment into something that defied easy categorization or description, becoming simultaneously a business, a community center, a cultural institution, and a sacred space where the highest ideals of service and friendship could find their most perfect expression. The establishment's reputation for exceptional coffee had spread throughout the region and beyond, drawing visitors and coffee enthusiasts from distant communities who came not merely to taste remarkable beverages, but to experience the atmosphere of peace and genuine hospitality that had become the Roost's most distinctive and valuable characteristic. These visiting coffee lovers often arrived with high expectations based on stories they had heard from friends and fellow enthusiasts, yet virtually without exception, they departed with the understanding that their anticipations had been not merely met, but exceeded in ways they had never thought possible. The technical excellence of Brewster's coffee preparation was matched and enhanced by the spiritual dimensions of service that transformed mere consumption into experiences of connection and renewal that lingered in memory long after the final sips had been savored and appreciated. The influence of the Roost's example had begun to spread throughout the broader coffee culture of the region, as other establishments attempted to understand and replicate the principles and practices that had made Brewster's coffee service so extraordinary and beloved. While few could match the depth of his dedication or the sophistication of his techniques, many were inspired to elevate their own standards and approaches, creating a general improvement in coffee quality and service throughout the area that benefited everyone who appreciated the transformative potential of perfectly prepared coffee shared in environments of mutual respect and genuine care. The educational impact of the Roost extended beyond professional coffee preparation to encompass broader lessons about customer service, community building, and the various ways that individuals could create positive influences through commitment to excellence and authentic concern for others' welfare and happiness. Business owners, community leaders, and individuals seeking to improve their own approaches to work and relationships often found themselves studying Brewster's methods and philosophy, seeking to understand the principles that enabled him to achieve such remarkable results through seemingly simple and unassuming approaches to daily interaction and service provision. The teaching role that had gradually developed around Brewster's work was never formalized or officially acknowledged, as he continued to focus primarily on his daily responsibilities at the Roost, rather than seeking recognition as an educator or philosophical leader. Yet the lessons that could be learned through observation of his methods and approaches had become increasingly valuable to individuals and organizations, seeking to understand how authentic service and genuine community connection could be created and maintained in environments that often emphasized efficiency and profit over deeper human values and relationships. The stream of apprentices and aspiring coffee masters who sought opportunities to learn from Brewster had grown steadily over the years, creating informal networks of individuals who carried his approaches and philosophy to new communities and establishments throughout the region and beyond. These student practitioners, while developing their own unique styles and specializations, maintained core commitments to excellence and service, that reflected their mentor's influence while adapting his principles to diverse circumstances and community needs. The mentorship relationships that developed between Brewster and these dedicated students provided opportunities for his own continued learning and growth, as their questions and perspectives challenged him to articulate and examine aspects of his practice that he might otherwise have taken for granted or left unexamined. The process of teaching others helped him develop deeper understanding of his own methods and motivations, while also creating connections with younger practitioners who brought fresh energy and innovation to traditional coffee culture. Some of these students eventually established their own coffee houses in distant communities, carrying the Roost's influence to regions where such standards of excellence and service had never before been experienced or expected. These new establishments, while reflecting their founders' individual personalities and local community requirements, maintained the fundamental principles of customer care and craft dedication that had made the Roost legendary, creating expanding networks of coffee culture that elevated standards and expectations throughout increasingly wide geographical areas. The correspondence that Brewster maintained with these former students and fellow practitioners had become another dimension of his educational influence, as letters and visits allowed him to share insights and advice while also learning about innovations and adaptations that could enhance his own understanding and practice. These professional relationships created communities of excellence that transcended geographical boundaries while maintaining the personal connections and mutual support that were essential for continued growth and development. The cultural preservation role that the Roost had come to play in maintaining and transmitting traditional coffee culture and service excellence had become increasingly important as rapid changes in other areas of commerce and community life threatened to sweep away the patience, craftsmanship, and dedication to quality that had historically characterized the finest expressions of coffee, art, and hospitality. Brewster's establishment served as a living museum and active demonstration of approaches to coffee service that honored ancestral wisdom while remaining relevant and effective in contemporary circumstances. The documentation and preservation of coffee culture knowledge that occurred through the Roost's daily operations had created valuable resources for future generations of coffee enthusiasts and practitioners who would need access to traditional techniques and principles in order to maintain standards of excellence that might otherwise be lost or forgotten in an increasingly commercialized and efficiency-focused world. The establishment's role as repository of coffee culture wisdom extended far beyond its immediate service functions to encompass broader responsibilities for cultural continuity and educational transmission. The community impact of the Roost's presence and influence had transformed not merely local coffee culture, but also broader patterns of social interaction and community building throughout the village and surrounding region. The establishment's demonstration that commercial enterprises could serve community welfare while maintaining profitability had inspired other business owners to reconsider their own approaches to customer service and community engagement, leading to general improvements in the quality and character of commercial life throughout the area. The model of business operation that the Roost represented had proven that success could be achieved through focus on excellence and service rather than aggressive marketing or competitive pricing, providing encouragement and practical guidance for entrepreneurs and business owners who preferred to build their enterprises on foundations of quality and integrity rather than purely commercial considerations. The establishment's financial sustainability had demonstrated that such approaches could be economically viable while also contributing to community welfare and cultural enrichment. The social capital that had accumulated around the Roost through years of excellent service and community building had created networks of connection and mutual support that extended throughout the village and beyond. strengthening the social fabric that enabled the community to address challenges and pursue opportunities with unprecedented effectiveness and cooperation. The relationships formed and maintained through coffee sharing and conversation had become foundations for collaborative efforts in areas ranging from local governance and economic development to cultural celebration and mutual aid during difficult periods. The personal satisfaction and fulfillment that Brewster derived from his life's work had deepened and expanded over the years, as he witnessed the positive impacts that his dedication and service had created for countless individuals and communities. The quiet pigeon who had once worried about finding his proper place and purpose in the world had discovered through coffee service not merely a livelihood, but a calling that provided meaning and direction for every aspect of his existence, while also contributing to the welfare and happiness of all who encountered his hospitality and expertise. The legacy that was being created through the Roost's daily operations and long-term influence would endure long beyond Brewster's individual involvement, as the principles and practices he had developed and demonstrated would continue to inspire and guide future generations of coffee lovers, service providers, and community builders who understood the transformative potential of excellence applied with genuine love and dedication to the welfare of others. The integration of personal fulfillment and community service that had characterized Brewster's approach to life and work had created a model of meaningful existence that demonstrated the possibility of achieving individual satisfaction while simultaneously contributing to collective welfare and cultural advancement, providing inspiration and practical guidance for anyone seeking to align their personal aspirations with broader purposes and values that transcended purely individual considerations and achievements. Through patience, dedication, and unwavering commitment to excellence in service of others, the quiet pigeon who had once searched for his place in the world had found not merely a home and a livelihood, but a purpose that connected him to the deepest traditions of hospitality and community building, while also creating new possibilities for human connection and cultural enrichment that would continue to influence and inspire generations yet to come. And so we conclude our gentle journey through the aromatic world of Brewster and his beloved roost, where every cup served carries within it the weight of tradition and the warmth of genuine care. We have witnessed how a quiet pigeon's dedication to his craft became the foundation for countless friendships, how the simple act of brewing coffee transformed into something approaching the sacred. In the roost's peaceful atmosphere, we discovered that the most profound connections often bloom in the quietest moments, nurtured by patience, consistency, and the understanding that true service comes from the heart. Throughout our contemplative exploration of Brewster's remarkable journey, we have seen how ancient traditions of coffee culture found their perfect expression in the gentle hands of one who understood that excellence in service was never about personal recognition or material gain, but rather about creating spaces where souls could find refuge, connection, and the kind of authentic hospitality that had become increasingly rare in a world that often valued speed and efficiency over depth and genuine care. The transformation of a young pigeon's uncertain dreams into a legendary establishment that touched countless lives across generations stands as testament to the power of quiet dedication and unwavering commitment to principles that transcend the merely commercial or practical. Through patient accumulation of countless small acts of kindness and excellence, Brewster had created something that served needs far deeper than simple caffeine consumption or social convenience, establishing a sanctuary where the highest ideals of community life could find their most beautiful and enduring expression. We have witnessed how the Roost evolved from humble beginnings into a cultural institution that preserved and transmitted not merely techniques for coffee preparation, but also wisdom about human connection, community building, and the various ways that individuals could contribute to collective welfare while finding personal fulfillment through service to others. The establishment became a living demonstration that commercial enterprises could serve broader purposes while maintaining both financial sustainability and authentic commitment to values that enriched rather than exploited the communities they served. The seasonal rhythms that governed life at the Roost revealed how attention to natural cycles and community needs could create experiences that honored both tradition and innovation, demonstrating that excellence required not rigid adherence to unchanging formulas, but rather sensitive adaptation to evolving circumstances, while maintaining core commitments to quality and service that remained constant regardless of external variations or challenges. Through Brewster's relationships with regular customers, seasonal visitors, and newcomers seeking their places within village life, we discovered how coffee culture could serve as a bridge between different backgrounds, personalities, and life circumstances, creating common ground where mutual respect and appreciation could flourish despite the differences that might otherwise have created barriers to understanding and connection. The secret traditions that Brewster maintained, from his carefully guarded gyroid collection to his sacred offerings of pigeon milk to the most trusted friends, revealed depths of character and cultural heritage that enriched his daily service while connecting him to ancestral wisdom and practices that provided meaning and continuity beyond the immediate concerns of business operation and customer satisfaction. The educational influence that flowed naturally from the Roost's example had created networks of excellence that extended far beyond the physical boundaries of the establishment itself, inspiring other coffee masters, business owners, and community leaders to elevate their own standards and approaches while maintaining the fundamental principles of genuine service and authentic care that made such excellence possible and sustainable. As you drift towards sleep, let yourself imagine the gentle sounds that filled the Roost during its quietest moments, when the last customers had departed and Brewster could reflect on another day of service completed with characteristic excellence and dedication. Picture the soft light filtering through windows that had witnessed countless conversations and connections, the careful arrangement of equipment that had produced thousands of perfect cups, and the peaceful atmosphere that had provided refuge and renewal for all who had been blessed to experience its welcoming embrace. Dream of morning light awakening the village to another day of possibility and connection, of residents making their way along familiar paths toward the Roost's open door, of Brewster beginning his daily rituals of preparation with the same attention to detail and commitment to excellence that had characterized every cup he had ever served. Imagine the aroma of freshly ground coffee beans mingling with the gentle sounds of a community awakening to new opportunities for friendship and collaboration. Rest now in the knowledge that somewhere, in villages both real and imagined, there are places where everyone is welcome, where perfect coffee waits to be shared, and where the simple act of offering hospitality becomes a bridge between souls seeking connection and understanding. The legacy of the Roost continues to inspire all who understand that the greatest achievements often emerge not from grand gestures or dramatic proclamations, but from patient dedication to excellence in service of others and faithful commitment to values that make civilized life possible and beautiful. The aroma of possibility lingers still, carrying with it promises of warm welcomes, perfect cups, and the kind of authentic hospitality that transforms ordinary moments into treasured memories. In the quiet corners of countless communities, the spirit of the Roost lives on through all who have learned, that true success lies not in personal advancement, but in the connections we create and the service we provide to others who share our brief journey through this world of infinite possibility and eternal hope.